The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, The Japanese Art of Decluttering and Organizing by Marie Kondo. In this book, I have summed up how to put your space in order in a way that will change your life forever. Impossible? A common response and not surprising, considering that almost everyone has experienced a rebound effect at least once, if not multiple times, after tidying. Have you ever tidied madly, only to find that all too soon your home or workspace is cluttered again? If so, let me share with you the secret of success. Start by discarding. Then organize your space, thoroughly, completely, in one go. If you adopt this approach, the KonMari method, you'll never revert to clutter again. Although this approach contradicts conventional wisdom, everyone who completes my private course has successfully kept their house in order, with unexpected results. Putting their house in order positively affects all other aspects of their lives, including work and family. Having devoted more than 80% of my life to this subject, I know that tidying can transform your life. Does it still sound too good to be true? If your idea of tidying is getting rid of one unnecessary item a day or cleaning up your room a little at a time, then you are right. It won't have much effect on your life. If you change your approach, however, tidying can have an immeasurable impact. In fact, that is what it means to put your house in order. I started reading home and lifestyle magazines when I was 5, and it was this that inspired me, from the age of 15, to undertake a serious study of tidying that led to my development of the KonMari method, based on a combination of my first and last names. I am now a consultant and spend most of my days visiting homes and offices, giving hands-on advice to people who find it difficult to tidy, who tidy but suffer rebounds, or who want to tidy but don't know where to start. The number of things my clients have discarded, from clothes and undergarments to photos, pens, magazine clippings, and makeup samples, easily exceeds 1 million items. This is no exaggeration. I have assisted individual clients who have thrown out 245-liter garbage bags in one go. For my exploration of the art of organizing and my experience helping messy people become tidy, there is one thing I can say with confidence. A dramatic reorganization of the home causes correspondingly dramatic changes in lifestyle and perspective. It is life-transforming. I mean it. Here are just a few of the testimonies I receive on a daily basis from former clients. After your course, I quit my job and launched my own business doing something I had dreamed of doing ever since I was a child. Your course taught me to see what I really need and what I don't. So I got a divorce. Now I feel much happier. Someone I have been wanting to get in touch with recently contacted me. I'm delighted to report that since cleaning up my apartment, I've been able to really increase my sales. My husband and I are getting along much better. I'm amazed to find that just throwing things away has changed me so much. I finally succeeded in losing 10 pounds. My clients always sound so happy, and the results show that tidying has changed their way of thinking and their approach to life. In fact, it has changed their future. Why? This question is addressed in more detail throughout the book, but basically, when you put your house in order, you put your affairs and your past in order too. As a result, you can see quite clearly what you need in life and what you don't, and what you should and shouldn't do. I currently offer a course for clients in their homes and for company owners in their offices. These are all private, one-on-one consultations, but I have yet to run out of clients. There is currently a 3-month waiting list, and I receive inquiries daily from people who have been introduced by a former client or who have heard about the course from someone else. I travel from one end of Japan to the other, and sometimes even overseas. Tickets for one of my public talks for stay-at-home parents sold out overnight. There was a waiting list not only for cancellations but also for the waiting list. Yet my repeater rate is 0. From a business perspective, this would appear to be a fatal flaw. But what if my lack of repeaters was actually the secret to the popularity of my approach? As I said at the beginning, people who use the KonMari method never revert to clutter again. Because they can keep their space in order, they don't need to come back for more lessons. I occasionally check in with graduates of my courses to see how they are doing. In almost every case, not only is their home or office still in order, but they are continuing to improve their space. It is evident from the photographs they send that they have even fewer belongings than when they finished the course, and have acquired new curtains and furnishings. They are surrounded only by the things they love. Why does my course transform people? Because my approach is not simply a technique. The act of tidying is a series of simple actions in which objects are moved from one place to another. It involves putting things away where they belong. This seems so simple that even a 6-year-old should be able to do it. Yet most people can't. A short time after tidying, their space is a disorganized mess. The cause is not lack of skills, but rather lack of awareness, and the inability to make tidying a regular habit. In other words, the root of the problem lies in the mind. Success is 90% dependent on our mindset. Excluding the fortunate few to whom organizing comes naturally, if we do not address this aspect, rebound is inevitable, no matter how much is discarded or how cleverly things are organized. So how can you acquire the right kind of mindset? There is just one way, and, paradoxically, it is by acquiring the right technique. Remember, the KonMari method I describe in this book is not a mere set of rules on how to sort, organize, and put things away. It is a guide to acquiring the right mindset for creating order and becoming a tidy person. Of course, I can't claim that all my students have perfected the art of tidying. Unfortunately, some had to stop for one reason or another before completing the course, and some quit because they expected me to do the work for them. As an organizing fanatic and professional, I can tell you right now that no matter how hard I try to organize another space, no matter how perfect a storage system I devise, I can never put someone else's house in order in the true sense of the term. Why? Because a person's awareness and perspective on his or her own lifestyle are far more important than any skill at sorting, storing, or whatever. Order is dependent on the extremely personal values of what a person wants to live with. Most people would prefer to live in a clean and tidy space. Anyone who has managed to tidy even once will have wished to keep it that way. But many don't believe it's possible. They try out various approaches to tidying, only to find that things soon return to normal. I am absolutely convinced, however, that everyone can keep his or her space in order. To do that, it is essential to thoroughly reassess your habits and assumptions about tidying. That may sound like far too much work, but don't worry. By the time you finish listening to this book, you will be ready and willing. People often tell me, "I'm disorganized by nature. I can't do it," or "I don't have time." But being messy is not hereditary, nor is it related to lack of time. It has far more to do with the accumulation of mistaken notions about tidying, such as, "It's best to tackle one room at a time," or "It's better to do a little each day," or "Storage should follow the flow plan of the house." In Japan, people believe that things like cleaning your room and keeping your bathroom spick and span bring good luck. But if your house is cluttered, the effect of polishing the toilet bowl is going to be limited. The same is true for the practice of feng shui. It is only when you put your house in order that your furniture and decorations come to life. When you've finished putting your house in order, your life will change dramatically. Once you have experienced what it's like to have a truly ordered house, you'll feel your whole world brighten. Never again will you revert to clutter. This is what I call the magic of tidying. And the effects are stupendous. Not only will you never be messy again, but you'll also get a new start on life. This is the magic I want to share with as many people as possible. 1. Why can't I keep my house in order? You can't tidy if you've never learned how. When I tell people that my profession is teaching others how to tidy, I am usually met with looks of astonishment. Can you actually make money doing that? is their first question. This is almost always followed by, "Do people need lessons in tidying?" It's true that while instructors in schools offer courses in everything from cooking and how to wear a kimono to yoga and Zen meditation, you'll be hard-pressed to find classes on how to tidy. The general assumption, in Japan at least, is that tidying doesn't need to be taught, but rather is picked up naturally. Cooking skills and recipes are passed down as family traditions from grandmother to mother to daughter. Yet one never hears of anyone passing on the family secrets of tidying, even within the same household. Think back to your own childhood. I'm sure most of us have been scolded for not tidying up our rooms, but how many of our parents consciously taught us how to tidy as part of our upbringing? Our parents demanded that we clean up our rooms, but they too had never been trained in how to do that. When it comes to tidying, we are all self-taught. Instruction in tidying is neglected not only in the home but also at school. When we think back to our home economics classes, most of us remember making hamburgers or learning how to use a sewing machine to make an apron. But compared to cooking and sewing, surprisingly little time is devoted to the subject of tidying. Even if it is included in a textbook, that section is either just read in class, or worse, assigned for reading at home so that students can skip ahead to more popular topics, such as food and health. Consequently, even the extremely rare home economics graduates who have formally studied tidying can't do it. Food, clothing, and shelter are the most basic human needs, so you would think that where we live would be considered just as important as what we eat and what we wear. Yet in most societies, tidying, the job that keeps a home livable, is completely disregarded because of the misconception that the ability to tidy is acquired through experience and therefore doesn't require training. Do people who have been tidying for more years than others tidy better? The answer is no. 25% of my students are women in their 50s, and the majority of them have been homemakers for close to 30 years, which makes them veterans at this job. But do they tidy better than women in their 20s? The opposite is true. Many of them have spent so many years applying erroneous conventional approaches that their homes overflow with unnecessary items, and they struggle to keep clutter under control with ineffective storage methods. How can they be expected to know how to tidy when they have never studied it properly? If you too don't know how to tidy, don't be discouraged. Now is the time to learn. By studying and applying the KonMari method presented in this book, you can escape the vicious cycle of clutter. A tidying marathon doesn't cause rebound. I clean up when I realize how untidy my place is, but once I'm done, it's not long before it's a mess again. This is a common complaint, and the standard response touted by magazine advice columns is, "Don't try tidying your entire house all at once. You'll just rebound. Make a habit of doing a little at a time." I first stumbled across this refrain when I was 5. As the middle child of 3 children, I was raised with a great deal of freedom. My mother was busy taking care of my newborn younger sister, and my brother, who was 2 years older than me, was always glued to the TV playing video games. Consequently, I spent most of my time at home on my own. My favorite pastime was reading home and lifestyle magazines. My mother subscribed to Esse, a magazine with features on interior decorating, cleaning tips, and product reviews. As soon as it was delivered, I would snatch it from the mailbox before my mother even knew it had arrived, rip open the envelope, and immerse myself in the contents. On my way home from school, I liked to stop at the bookstore and browse through Orange Page, a popular Japanese food magazine. I wasn't actually able to read all the words, but these magazines, with their photos of scrumptious dishes, amazing tips for removing stains and grease, and penny-saving ideas, were as fascinating for me as game guides were for my brother. I would fold the corner of a page that caught my interest and dream of trying out the tip described. I also made up a variety of my own solitary games. For example, after reading a feature on saving money, I immediately launched into a power-saving game that involved roaming about the house and unplugging things that weren't in use, even though I knew nothing about electric meters. In response to another feature, I filled plastic bottles with water and put them in the toilet tank in a solo water-saving contest. Articles on storage inspired me to convert milk cartons into dividers for my drawers and make a letter rack by stacking empty video cases between two pieces of furniture. At school, while other kids were playing dodgeball or skipping, I'd slip away to rearrange the bookshelves in our classroom or check the contents of the mop cupboard, all the while muttering about the poor storage methods. If only there were an S-hook, it would be so much easier to use. But there was one problem that seemed unsolvable. No matter how much I tidied, it wasn't long before every space was a mess again. The milk carton dividers in my desk drawer soon overflowed with pens. The rack made from video cases was soon so crammed with letters and papers that it crumpled to the floor. With cooking or sewing, practice makes perfect. But even though tidying is also housework, I never seemed to improve no matter how often I did it. Nowhere stayed tidy for long. It can't be helped, I consoled myself. Rebound comes with the territory. If I tackle the job all at once, I'll just get discouraged. I had read this in many articles about tidying and assumed it was true. If I had a time machine now, I'd go back and tell myself, that's wrong. If you use the right approach, you'll never rebound. Most people associate the word rebound with dieting, but when they hear it used in the context of tidying, it still makes sense. It seems logical that a sudden, drastic reduction in clutter could have the same effect as a drastic cut in calories. But don't be deceived. The moment you begin moving furniture around and getting rid of garbage, your room changes. It's very simple. If you put your house in order in one fell swoop, you will have tidied up in one fell swoop. In Japanese, the term is ikini, or in one go. Rebound occurs because people mistakenly believe they have tidied thoroughly, when in fact, they have only sorted and stored things halfway. If you put your house in order properly, you'll be able to keep your room tidy, even if you are lazy or sloppy by nature. Tidy a little a day and you'll be tidying forever. If you tidy your house all at once, you'll rebound. It's better to make it a habit to do a little at a time. Although this advice sounds very tempting, we've already seen that the first part is wrong. How about the suggestion that we should do only a little a day? Although it sounds convincing, don't be fooled. The reason you never seem to finish is precisely because you tidy a little at a time. Changing lifestyle habits acquired over a span of many years is generally extremely difficult. If you have never succeeded in staying tidy to date, you will find it next to impossible to develop the habit of tidying a little at a time. People cannot change their habits without first changing their way of thinking. And that's not easy. After all, it's quite hard to control what we think. There is, however, one way to drastically transform the way we think about tidying. The subject of tidying first caught my attention when I was in junior high school. The catalyst was a book called The Art of Discarding by Nagisa Tatsumi, Takarajimasha Incorporated, which explained the importance of getting rid of unnecessary things. I picked the book up on my way home from school, intrigued to see a topic I had never encountered before, and I can still remember the shock of surprise I felt as I read it on the train. I became so absorbed that I almost missed my stop. Once home, I went straight to my room with a handful of garbage bags and stayed closeted for several hours. Although my room was small, by the time I finished I had 8 bags full of stuff. Clothes I never wore, textbooks from elementary school, toys I had not played with in years, my eraser and seal collection. I had forgotten that most of these things even existed. I sat motionless on the floor for about an hour afterward, staring at the pile of bags and wondering, why on earth did I bother keeping all this stuff? What shocked me most, however, was how different my room looked. After only a few hours, I could see parts of the floor that had never been revealed before. My room seemed to have been transformed, and the air inside seemed so much fresher and brighter that even my mind felt clearer. Tidying, I realized, could have far more impact than I had ever imagined. Thunderstruck by the extent of the change, from that day on I turned my attention from cooking and sewing, which I had thought were the essentials of a well-kept home, to the art of tidying. Tidying brings visible results. Tidying never lies. The ultimate secret of success is this. If you tidy up in one shot, rather than little by little, you can dramatically change your mindset. A change so profound that it touches your emotions will irresistibly affect your way of thinking and your lifestyle habits. My clients do not develop the habit of tidying gradually. Every one of them has been clutter-free since they undertook their tidying marathon. This approach is the key to preventing rebound. When people revert to clutter, no matter how much they tidy, it is not their room or their belongings, but their way of thinking that is at fault. Even if they are initially inspired, they can't stay motivated and their efforts peter out. The root cause lies in the fact that they can't see the results or feel the effects. This is precisely why success depends on experiencing tangible results immediately. If you use the right method and concentrate your efforts on eliminating clutter thoroughly and completely within a short span of time, you'll see instant results that will empower you to keep your space in order ever after. Anyone who experiences this process, no matter who they are, will vow never to revert to clutter again. Why you should aim for perfection. Don't aim for perfection. Start off slowly and discard just one item a day. What lovely words to ease the hearts of those who lack confidence in their ability to tidy. I came across this advice when I was devouring every book about tidying that had ever been published in Japan, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. The momentum sparked by my epiphany concerning the power of tidying was beginning to wear off, and I was starting to feel jaded by the lack of solid results. These words seemed to make sense. It seems daunting to aim for perfection from the beginning. Besides, perfection is supposedly unattainable. By discarding one thing a day, I could get rid of 365 things by the end of the year. Convinced that I had discovered a very practical method, I immediately followed the book's instructions. I opened my closet in the morning wondering what to dispose of that day. Seeing a t-shirt that I no longer wore, I put it in the garbage bag. Before going to bed the next night, I opened my desk drawer and discovered a notebook that seemed too childish for me. I put it in the bag. Noticing a memo pad in the same drawer, I thought to myself, oh, I don't need that anymore. But as I reached out to pick it up, I paused at a new thought. I can save that to discard tomorrow. And I waited until the next morning to throw it away. The day after that, I forgot completely, so I got rid of 2 items on the following day. To be honest, I did not last 2 weeks. I am not the type of person who likes to plug away at something, one step at a time. For people like me, who do their assignments on the very last day right before the deadline, this approach just doesn't work. Besides, casting off one object a day did not compensate for the fact that when I shop, I buy several items at one time. In the end, the pace at which I reduced could not keep up with the pace at which I acquired new things, and I was confronted with the discouraging fact that my space was still cluttered. It wasn't long before I had completely forgotten to follow the rule of discarding 1 item per day. So I can tell you from experience that you will never get your house in order if you only clean up half-heartedly. If, like me, you are not the diligent, persevering type, then I recommend aiming for perfection just once. Many people may protest when I use the word perfection, insisting that it's an impossible goal. But don't worry. Tidying in the end is just a physical act. The work involved can be broadly divided into 2 kinds: deciding whether or not to dispose of something, and deciding where to put it. If you can do these 2 things, you can achieve perfection. Objects can be counted. All you need to do is look at each item, one at a time, and decide whether or not to keep it and where to put it. That's all you need to complete this job. It is not hard to tidy up perfectly and completely in one fell swoop. In fact, anyone can do it. And if you want to avoid rebound, this is the only way to do it. The moment you start, you reset your life. Have you ever found yourself unable to study the night before an exam and begun frantically tidying? I confess, I have. In fact, for me it was a regular event. I would take the piles of handouts covering my desk and throw them in the garbage. Then, unable to stop, I'd tackle the textbooks and papers littering the floor and begin arranging them in my bookcase. Finally, I'd open my desk drawer and start organizing my pens and pencils. Before I knew it, it would be 2:30 in the morning. Overcome by sleep, I'd jolt awake again at 5, and only then, in a complete panic, would I open my textbook and buckle down to study. I thought that this urge to tidy before an exam was a peculiar quirk of my own, but after meeting many others who do the same, I realized that it was a common phenomenon. Many people get the urge to clean up when under pressure, such as just before an exam. But this urge doesn't occur because they want to clean their room. It occurs because they need to put something else in order. Their brain is actually clamoring to study, but when it notices the cluttered space, the focus switches to, I need to clean up my room. The fact that the tidying urge rarely continues once the crisis is over proves my theory. Once the exam has ended, the passion poured into cleaning the previous night dissipates, and life returns to normal. All thought of tidying is wiped from the person's mind. Why? Because the problem faced, that is, the need to study for the exam, has been tidied away. This doesn't mean that tidying your room will actually calm your troubled mind. While it may help you feel refreshed temporarily, the relief won't last because you haven't addressed the true cause of your anxiety. If you let the temporary relief achieved by tidying up your physical space deceive you, you will never recognize the need to clean up your psychological space. This was true for me. Distracted by the need to tidy my room, it took me so long to get down to studying that my grades were always terrible. Let's imagine a cluttered room. It does not get messy all by itself. You, the person who lives in it, makes the mess. There is a saying that a messy room equals a messy mind. I look at it this way. When a room becomes cluttered, the cause is more than just physical. Visible mess helps distract us from the true source of the disorder. The act of cluttering is really an instinctive reflex that draws our attention away from the heart of an issue. If you can't feel relaxed in a clean and tidy room, try confronting your feeling of anxiety. It may shed light on what is really bothering you. When your room is clean and uncluttered, you have no choice but to examine your inner state. You can see any issues you have been avoiding and are forced to deal with them. From the moment you start tidying, you will be compelled to reset your life. As a result, your life will start to change. That's why the task of putting your house in order should be done quickly. It allows you to confront the issues that are really important. Tidying is just a tool, not the final destination. The true goal should be to establish the lifestyle you want most once your house has been put in order. Storage experts are hoarders. What is the first problem that comes to mind when you think of tidying? For many, the answer is storage. My clients often want me to teach them what to put where. Believe me, I can relate. But unfortunately, this is not the real issue. A booby trap lies within the term storage. Features on how to organize and store your belongings and convenient storage products are always accompanied by stock phrases that make it sound simple, such as, organize your space in no time, or make tidying fast and easy. It's human nature to take the easy route, and most people leap at storage methods that promise quick and convenient ways to remove visible clutter. I confess that I, too, was once captivated by the storage myth. An avid fan of home and lifestyle magazines since kindergarten, I would read a feature on how to put things away and have to try out each suggestion immediately. I made drawers out of tissue boxes and broke my piggy bank to purchase nifty storage items. In junior high, on my way home from school, I would drop in at a DIY store or browse at a magazine stand to check out the latest products. In high school, I even called up the manufacturer of particularly intriguing items and pestered the receptionist to tell me the story of how they were invented. I dutifully used these storage items to organize my things. Then I would stand and admire my handiwork, content with how convenient the world had become. From this experience, I can honestly declare that storage methods do not solve the problem of how to get rid of clutter. In the end, they are only a superficial answer. When I finally came to my senses, I saw that my room still wasn't tidy, even though it was full of magazine racks, bookshelves, drawer dividers, and other storage units of every kind. Why does my room still feel cluttered when I've worked so hard to organize and store things away? I wondered. Filled with despair, I looked at the contents of each storage unit and had a flash of revelation. I didn't need most of the things that were in them. Although I thought that I had been tidying, in fact I had merely been wasting my time shoving stuff out of sight, concealing the things I didn't need under a lid. Putting things away creates the illusion that the clutter problem has been solved. But sooner or later, all the storage units are full. The room once again overflows with things, and some new and easy storage method becomes necessary, creating a negative spiral. This is why tidying must start with discarding. We need to exercise self-control and resist storing our belongings until we have finished identifying what we really want and need to keep. Sort by category, not by location. My study of tidying began in earnest when I was in junior high and basically consisted of repeated practice. Every day I cleaned one place at a time: my own room, my brother's room, my sister's room, the bathroom. Each day I planned where to tidy and launched solo campaigns that resembled bargain sales. The 5th of every month is living room day. Today is clean the pantry day. Tomorrow I conquer the bathroom cupboards. I maintained this custom even after entering high school. When I came home, I headed straight for the place I had decided to clean that day without even changing out of my school uniform. If my target was a set of plastic drawers in the washroom cupboard, I would open the doors and dump everything out of one of the drawers, including makeup samples, soaps, toothbrushes, and razors. Then I would sort them by category, organize them into box dividers, and return them to the drawer. Finally, I would gaze in quiet admiration at the neatly organized contents before going on to the next drawer. I would sit on the floor for hours sorting things in the cupboard until my mother called me for supper. One day, I was sorting the contents of a drawer in the hall cupboard when I stopped in surprise. This must be the same drawer that I cleaned yesterday, I thought. It wasn't, but the items inside were the same: makeup samples, soaps, toothbrushes, and razors. I was sorting them by category, putting them in boxes, and returning them to the drawer just like I had the day before. It was at this moment that it hit me. Tidying up by location is a fatal mistake. I'm ashamed to admit that it took me 3 years to see this. Many people are surprised to hear that such a seemingly viable approach is actually a common pitfall. The root of the problem lies in the fact that people often store the same type of item in more than one place. When we tidy each place separately, we fail to see that we're repeating the same work in many locations and become locked into a vicious circle of tidying. To avoid this, I recommend tidying by category. For example, instead of deciding that today you'll tidy a particular room, set goals like clothes today, books tomorrow. One reason so many of us never succeed at tidying is because we have too much stuff. This excess is caused by our ignorance of how much we actually own. When we disperse storage of a particular item throughout the house and tidy one place at a time, we can never grasp the overall volume and therefore can never finish. To escape this negative spiral, tidy by category, not by place. Don't change the method to suit your personality. Handbooks for tidying often claim that the cause of clutter differs depending on the person, and that therefore we should select the method that best suits our personality type. At first glance, this argument seems convincing. So that's why I can't seem to keep my space tidy, we might think. The method I've been using doesn't suit my character. We can check the handy chart on what method works for lazy people, busy people, picky people, or non-picky people, and choose the one that fits. At one point, I explored this idea of categorizing methods of tidying by character type. I read books on psychology, interviewed my clients about their blood types, their parents' characters, and so on, and even tried a popular type of astrology called Dobutsu Uranai, or zoological fortune-telling. I spent over 5 years analyzing my findings in my search for a general principle governing the best method for each personality type. Instead, I discovered that there is no point whatsoever in changing your approach to suit your personality. When it comes to tidying, the majority of people are lazy. They are also busy. As for being picky, everyone is particular about certain things, but not about others. When I examined the personality categories suggested, I realized that I fit all of them. So by what standard was I to categorize people's reasons for being untidy? I have a habit of trying to categorize everything, probably because I have spent so much time pondering how to organize. When I first started out as a consultant, I worked very hard to categorize my clients and tailor the content of my services to suit each type. In retrospect, however, I can see that I had an ulterior motive. Somehow I imagined that a complex approach consisting of different methods for different character types would make me look more professional. After careful consideration, however, I came to the conclusion that it makes far more sense to categorize people by their actions, rather than by some generalized personality trait. Using this approach, people who can't stay tidy can be categorized into just 3 types: the can't throw it away type, the can't put it back type, and the first 2 combined type. Looking at my clients, I further realized that 90% fall into the 3rd category, the can't throw it away, can't put it back type, while the remaining 10% fall into the can't put it back type. I have yet to find someone who is purely the can't throw it away type, probably because anyone who can't throw things away will soon end up with so much stuff that their storage space overflows. As for the 10% who can discard but can't put things away, when we start tidying seriously, it is soon obvious that they could discard much more because they produce at least 30 bags of garbage. My point is that tidying must begin with discarding, regardless of personality type. As long as my clients grasp this principle, there is no need for me to change the content of what I teach to suit the person. I teach the same approach to everyone. How I convey it and the way each client puts it into practice will naturally differ because each individual is just as unique as the way he or she furnishes the house. But I don't need to worry about identifying these differences or creating complex categories. Effective tidying involves only 2 essential actions: discarding and deciding where to store things. Of the 2, discarding must come first. This principle does not change. The rest depends on the level of tidiness you personally want to achieve. Make tidying a special event, not a daily chore. I begin my course with these words: tidying is a special event. Don't do it every day. This usually elicits a moment of stunned silence. Of course, there are countless perspectives on tidying, and even though I have undertaken an exhaustive study of the subject, I don't claim to know every method that exists. Therefore, what I say here applies only to my own method. Still, let me repeat, tidying should be done just once. Or, to put it more accurately, the work of tidying should be completed once and for all within a single period of time. If you think tidying is an endless chore that must be done every day, you are gravely mistaken. There are 2 types of tidying: daily tidying and special event tidying. Daily tidying, which consists of using something and putting it back in its place, will always be a part of our lives as long as we need to use clothes, books, writing materials, and so on. But the purpose of this book is to inspire you to tackle the special event of putting your house in order as soon as possible. By successfully concluding this once-in-a-lifetime task, you will gain the lifestyle you aspire to and enjoy a clean and orderly space of your choosing. Can you place your hand on your heart and swear that you are happy when surrounded by so much stuff that you don't even remember what's there? Most people desperately need to put their house in order. Unfortunately, the majority of them fail to embrace this as a special event, and instead make do with rooms that are more like storage sheds. Decades drag by as they struggle unsuccessfully to maintain order by tidying every day. Believe me, until you have completed the once-in-a-lifetime event of putting your house in order, any attempt to tidy on a daily basis is doomed to failure. Conversely, once you have put your house in order, tidying will be reduced to the very simple task of putting things back where they belong. In fact, this becomes an unconscious habit. I use the term special event because it is crucial to tackle this job within a short space of time while your spirits are uplifted. After all, it isn't desirable to stay in a state of excitement forever. You may worry that even when this event is over, your space will sink back into disorder. Perhaps you shop a lot and imagine that your possessions will just pile up again. I realize that it's hard to believe if you have never tried it, but once you have completed this dramatic cleanup, you will have no difficulty whatsoever in putting things back where they belong, or in deciding where to keep new things. Unbelievable as it may sound, you only have to experience a state of perfect order once to be able to maintain it. All you need to do is take the time to sit down and examine each item you own, decide whether you want to keep or discard it, and then choose where to put what you keep. Have you ever told yourself, "I'm just no good at tidying," or "It's not worth trying, I was born untidy"? Many people carry this type of negative self-image for years, but it is swept away the instant they experience their own perfectly clean space. This drastic change in self-perception, the belief that you can do anything if you set your mind to it, transforms behavior and lifestyles. This is precisely why my students never experience rebound. Once you have experienced the powerful impact of a perfectly ordered space, you too will never return to clutter. Yes, I mean you. It may sound too difficult, but I can honestly say that it's quite simple. When you tidy, you are dealing with objects. Objects are easy to discard and move around. Anyone can do it. Your goal is clearly in sight. The moment you have put everything in its place, you have crossed the finish line. Unlike work, studies, or sports, there is no need to compare your performance to that of anyone else. You are the standard. Better yet, the one thing that everyone finds hardest to do, continuing, is totally unnecessary. You only have to decide where to put things once. I never tidy my room. Why? Because it is already tidy. The only tidying I do is once or sometimes twice a year, and for a total of about 1 hour each time. The many days I spent tidying without seeing permanent results now seem hard to believe. In contrast, I feel happy and content. I have time to experience bliss in my quiet space, where even the air feels fresh and clean. Time to sit and sip herbal tea while I reflect on my day. As I look around, my glance falls on a painting that I particularly love, purchased overseas, and a vase of fresh flowers in one corner. Although not large, the space I live in is graced only with those things that speak to my heart. My lifestyle brings me joy. Wouldn't you like to live this way too? It's easy, once you know how to truly put your home in order. 2. Finish discarding first. Start by discarding, all at once, intensely and completely. You think you have tidied everything perfectly, but within a few days you notice that your room is becoming cluttered again. As time goes by, you collect more things, and before you know it, your space has reverted to its previous state. This rebound effect is caused by ineffective methods that tackle tidying only halfway. As I've already mentioned, there is just one way to escape this negative spiral: by tidying efficiently, all at once, as quickly as possible, to make the perfect clutter-free environment. But how does this create the right mindset? When you tidy your space completely, you transform the scenery. The change is so profound that you feel as if you are living in a totally different world. This deeply affects your mind and inspires a strong aversion to reverting to your previously cluttered state. The key is to make the change so sudden that you experience a complete change of heart. The same impact can never be achieved if the process is gradual. To achieve a sudden change like this, you need to use the most efficient method of tidying. Otherwise, before you know it, the day will be gone and you will have made no headway. The more time it takes, the more tired you feel, and the more likely you are to give up when you're only halfway through. When things pile up again, you will be caught in a downward spiral. From my experience with private individual lessons, quickly means about half a year. That may seem like a long time, but it is only 6 months out of your entire life. Once the process is complete and you've experienced what it's like to be perfectly tidy, you will have been freed forever from the mistaken assumption that you're no good at tidying. For the best results, I ask that you adhere faithfully to the following rule: tidy in the right order. As we've seen, there are only 2 tasks involved: discarding and deciding where to keep things. Just 2, but discarding must come first. Be sure to completely finish the first task before starting the next. Do not even think of putting your things away until you have finished the process of discarding. Failure to follow this order is one reason many people never make permanent progress. In the middle of discarding, they start thinking about where to put things. As soon as they think, "I wonder if it will fit in this drawer," the work of discarding comes to a halt. You can think about where to put things when you've finished getting rid of everything you don't need. To summarize, the secret of success is to tidy in one shot, as quickly and completely as possible, and to start by discarding. Before you start, visualize your destination. By now you understand why it is crucial to discard before thinking about where to keep things. But to start discarding without thinking ahead at all would be like casting yourself into the negative spiral of clutter. Instead, begin by identifying your goal. There must have been some reason you picked up this book. What was it that motivated you to tidy in the first place? What do you hope to gain through tidying? Before you start getting rid of things, take the time to think this through carefully. This means visualizing the ideal lifestyle you dream of. If you skip this step, not only will it delay the whole process, but it will also put you at higher risk for rebound. Goals like, "I want to live clutter-free," or "I want to be able to put things away," are too broad. You need to think much more deeply than that. Think in concrete terms so that you can vividly picture what it would be like to live in a clutter-free space. One client in her 20s defined her dream as a more feminine lifestyle. She lived in a messy 7-mat room. 7 tatami mats take up about 10 by 13 feet of floor space, with a built-in closet and 3 sets of shelves of different sizes. This should have been sufficient storage space, but no matter which way I turned, all I could see was clutter. The closet was so stuffed the doors wouldn't shut, and clothes oozed from the set of drawers inside like the stuffing in a hamburger. The curtain rail over the bay window was hung with so many clothes that there was no need for a curtain. The floor and bed were covered in baskets and bags filled with magazines and papers. When my client came home from work, she moved the things on her bed to the floor, and when she woke up, she put them back on the bed to make a path to the door so she could go to work. Her lifestyle could not have been called feminine by any stretch of the imagination. "What do you mean by a feminine lifestyle?" I asked. She thought for a long moment before finally responding. "Well, when I come home from work, the floor would be clear of clutter, and my room as tidy as a hotel suite with nothing obstructing the line of sight. I'd have a pink bedspread and a white antique-style lamp. Before going to bed, I would have a bath, burn aromatherapy oils, and listen to classical piano or violin while doing yoga and drinking herbal tea. I would fall asleep with a feeling of unhurried spaciousness." Her description was as vivid as if she actually lived that way. It's important to achieve this degree of concreteness when visualizing your ideal lifestyle. If you find that hard, if you can't picture the kind of life you would like to have, try looking in interior decorating magazines for photos that grab you. Visiting model homes can also be useful. Seeing a variety of homes will help you get a feel for what you like. By the way, the client I just described does indeed enjoy post-bath aromatherapy, classical music, and yoga. Redeemed from the depths of disorder, she emerged to grasp the feminine lifestyle to which she aspired. Now that you can picture the lifestyle you dream of, is it time to move on to discarding? No, not yet. I can understand your impatience, but to prevent rebound, you need to move ahead properly, step by step, as you launch into this once-in-a-lifetime event. Your next step is to identify why you want to live like that. Look back over your notes about the kind of lifestyle you want, and think again. Why do you want to do aromatherapy before bed? Why do you want to listen to classical music while doing yoga? If the answers are, because I want to relax before bed, and I want to do yoga to lose weight, ask yourself why you want to relax and why you want to lose weight. Maybe your answers will be, I don't want to be tired when I go to work the next day, and I want to lose weight so that I can be more svelte. Ask yourself why again, for each answer. Repeat this process 3 to 5 times for every item. As you continue to explore the reasons behind your ideal lifestyle, you will come to a simple realization. The whole point in both discarding and keeping things is to be happy. It may seem obvious, but it is important to experience this realization for yourself and let it sink into your heart. Before you start tidying, look at the lifestyle you aspire to and ask yourself, why do I want to tidy? When you find the answer, you are ready to move on to the next step, examining what you own. Selection criterion. Does it spark joy? What standard do you use to decide what to get rid of? There are several common patterns when it comes to discarding. One is to discard things when they cease being functional. For example, when something breaks down beyond repair or when part of a set is broken. Another is to discard things that are out of date, such as clothes that are no longer in fashion, or things related to an event that has passed. It's easy to get rid of things when there is an obvious reason for doing so. It's much more difficult when there is no compelling reason. Various experts have proposed yardsticks for discarding things people find hard to part with. These include such rules as, discard anything you haven't used for a year, and, if you can't decide, pack those items away in a box and look at them again 6 months later. However, the moment you start focusing on how to choose what to throw away, you have actually veered significantly off course. In this state, it is extremely risky to continue tidying. At one point in my life, I was virtually a disposal unit. After discovering the art of discarding when I was 15, I focused on how to get rid of things, and my research efforts escalated. I was always looking for new places to practice, be it my siblings' rooms or the communal storage lockers at school. My head was full of tidying tips, and I had complete, albeit misguided, confidence that I could tidy any place. My particular goal at that time was to get rid of as much as possible. I applied every criteria suggested by the various books I read on reducing. I tried getting rid of clothes that I hadn't worn for 2 years, discarding another item every time I bought something new, and throwing away anything I wasn't sure of. I threw out 30 bags of garbage in 1 month. But no matter how much I discarded, not a single room in my house felt any tidier. In fact, I found myself going shopping just to relieve the stress, and so failed miserably to reduce the total volume of my possessions. At home, I was always uptight, constantly on the lookout for superfluous things that could be discarded. When I found something not in use, I would pounce on it vengefully and throw it in the garbage. Not surprisingly, I became increasingly irritable and tense and found it impossible to relax even in my own home. One day after school, I opened the door to my room to begin cleaning as usual. At the sight of that untidy space, I finally lost it. "I don't want to tidy anymore!" I cried. Plopping myself down in the middle of my room, I began to think. I had spent 3 years tidying and discarding things, yet my room still felt cluttered. Would someone please tell me why my room isn't tidy when I work so hard at it? Although I did not say this out loud, in my heart I was practically shouting. At that moment, I heard a voice. "Look more closely at what is there." "What do you mean? I look at what's here so closely every day I could drill a hole through it all." With that thought still in my head, I fell fast asleep right there on the floor. If I had been a little smarter, I would have realized before I became so neurotic that focusing solely on throwing things away can only bring unhappiness. Why? Because we should be choosing what we want to keep, not what we want to get rid of. When I woke up, I knew immediately what that voice in my head had meant. Look more closely at what is there. I had been so focused on what to discard, on attacking the unwanted obstacles around me, that I had forgotten to cherish the things that I loved, the things I wanted to keep. Through this experience, I came to the conclusion that the best way to choose what to keep and what to throw away is to take each item in one's hand and ask, does this spark joy? If it does, keep it. If not, dispose of it. This is not only the simplest, but also the most accurate yardstick by which to judge. You may wonder about the effectiveness of such a vague criteria, but the trick is to handle each item. Don't just open up your closet and decide after a cursory glance that everything in it gives you a thrill. You must take each outfit in your hand. When you touch a piece of clothing, your body reacts. Its response to each item is different. Trust me and try it. I chose this standard for a reason. After all, what is the point in tidying? If it's not so that our space and the things in it can bring us happiness, then I think there is no point at all. Therefore, the best criterion for choosing what to keep and what to discard is whether keeping it will make you happy, whether it will bring you joy. Are you happy wearing clothes that don't give you pleasure? Do you feel joy when surrounded by piles of unread books that don't touch your heart? Do you think that owning accessories you know you'll never use will ever bring you happiness? The answer to these questions should be no. Now imagine yourself living in a space that contains only things that spark joy. Isn't this the lifestyle you dream of? Keep only those things that speak to your heart. Then take the plunge and discard all the rest. By doing this, you can reset your life and embark on a new lifestyle. One category at a time. Deciding what to keep on the basis of what sparks joy in your heart is the most important step in tidying. But what concrete steps are needed to efficiently eliminate excess? Let me begin by telling you what not to do. Don't start selecting and discarding by location. Don't think, I'll tidy the bedroom first and then move on to the living room, or I'll go through my drawers one by one, starting from the top down. This approach is fatal. Why? Because most people don't bother to store similar items in the same place. In the majority of households, items that fall into the same category are stored in 2 or more places scattered around the house. Say, for example, you start with the bedroom closet. After you have finished sorting and discarding everything in it, you are bound to come across clothes you kept in a different closet or a coat draped over a living room chair. You will then have to repeat the whole process of choosing and storing, wasting time and effort, and you cannot make an accurate assessment of what you want to keep and discard under such conditions. Repetition and wasted effort can kill motivation, and therefore it must be avoided. For this reason, I recommend that you always think in terms of category, not place. Before choosing what to keep, collect everything that falls within the same category at one time. Take every last item out and lay everything in one spot. To demonstrate the steps involved, let's go back to the previous example of clothing. You start by deciding that you are going to organize and put away your clothes. The next step is to search every room of the house. Bring every piece of clothing you find to the same place and spread them out on the floor. Then pick up each outfit and see if it sparks joy. Those, and only those, are the ones to keep. Follow this procedure for every category. If you have too many clothes, then you can make subcategories such as tops, bottoms, socks, and so on, and examine your clothes, one subcategory at a time. Gathering every item in one place is essential to this process because it gives you an accurate grasp of how much you have. Most people are shocked at the sheer volume, which is often at least twice what they imagined. By collecting things in one spot, you can also compare items that are similar in design, making it easier to decide whether you want to keep them. I have another good reason for removing all items in the same category from drawers, closets, and cupboards and spreading them out on the floor. Things stored out of sight are dormant. This makes it much harder to decide whether they inspire joy or not. By exposing them to the light of day and jolting them alive, so to speak, you'll find it surprisingly easy to judge whether they touch your heart. Dealing with just one category within a single time frame speeds up the tidying process. So be sure to gather every item in the category you are working on. Don't let any slip by unnoticed. Starting with mementos spells certain failure. You launch into your day all fired up to tidy, but before you know it, the sun is setting and you've barely made a dent in your belongings. Noticing the time with a start, you feel yourself sinking into self-reproach and despair. And what are you holding in your hands? More often than not, it's one of your favorite comic books, an album, or some other item that brings back fond memories. My advice to begin tidying not by room but by category does not mean that you should start with any category you like. The degree of difficulty involved in selecting what to keep and what to discard differs greatly depending on the category. People who get stuck halfway usually do so because they start with the things that are hardest to make decisions about. Things that bring back memories, such as photos, are not the place for beginners to start. Not only is the sheer volume of items in this category usually greater than that of any other, but it is also far harder to make a decision about whether or not to keep them. In addition to the physical value of things, there are 3 other factors that add value to our belongings: function, information, and emotional attachment. When the element of rarity is added, the difficulty in choosing what to discard multiplies. People have trouble discarding things that they could still use, functional value, that contain helpful information, informational value, and that have sentimental ties, emotional value. When these things are hard to obtain or replace, rarity, they become even harder to part with. The process of deciding what to keep and what to discard will go much more smoothly if you begin with items that are easier to make decisions about. As you gradually work toward the harder categories, you will be honing your decision-making skills. Clothes are the easiest because their rarity value is extremely low. Photographs and letters, on the other hand, not only have a high sentimental value but are also one of a kind. Therefore, they should be left until last. This is true for photographs in particular, because they tend to turn up at random while sorting through other categories and in the most unexpected places, such as between books and papers. The best sequence is this: clothes first, then books, papers, komono, miscellany, and lastly, mementos. This order has also proven to be the most efficient in terms of the level of difficulty for the subsequent task of storing. Finally, sticking to this sequence sharpens our intuitive sense of what items spark joy inside us. If you can dramatically accelerate the speed of the decision-making process just by changing the order in which you discard, don't you think it's worth a try? Don't let your family see. Marathon tidying produces a heap of garbage. At this stage, the one disaster that can wreak more havoc than an earthquake is the entrance of that recycling expert who goes by the alias of Mother. One of my clients, whom I'll call M, lived with her parents and one sibling. They had moved to the house 15 years earlier when M was still in grade school. Not only did she love buying clothes, but she also saved those that had sentimental value, such as school uniforms and t-shirts made for various events. She stored these in boxes and stacked them on the floor until the floorboards were completely obscured from view. It took 5 hours to sort and clean. By the end of that day, she had 15 bags to get rid of, including 8 bags of clothes, 200 books, various stuffed toys, and crafts she had made at school. We had stacked everything neatly beside the door on the floor, which was now finally visible, and I was just about to explain a very important point. "There's one secret you should know about getting rid of this garbage," I began, when the door opened and in came her mother bearing a tray of iced tea. Oh dear, I thought. Her mother set down the tray on a table. "Thank you so much for helping my daughter," she said, and turned to leave. At that moment, Her eyes fell on the pile of garbage by the door. "Oh my, are you going to throw that away?" she said, pointing to a pink yoga mat on top of the pile. "I haven't used it in 2 years." "Really? Well, maybe I'll use it then." She began rummaging through the bags. "Oh, and maybe this too." When she left, she took not only the yoga mat but also 3 skirts, 2 blouses, 2 jackets, and some stationery. When the room was quiet again, I sipped my iced tea and asked Em, "So how often does your mother do yoga?" "I've never seen her do any." What I had been about to say before her mother came in was this: "Don't let your family see what's here. If at all possible, take the bags out yourself. There's no need to let your family know the details of what you throw out or donate." I especially recommend that my clients avoid showing their parents. It's not that there is anything to be ashamed of. There's nothing wrong with tidying. However, it's extremely stressful for parents to see what their children discard. The sheer volume of the pile can make parents anxious about whether their children can survive on what's left. In addition, despite knowing that they should rejoice at their child's independence and maturity, parents can find it very painful to see clothes, toys, and mementos from the past on the rubbish heap, especially if they are things they gave to their child. Keeping your garbage out of sight is considerate. It also protects your family from acquiring more than they need or can enjoy. Up to this point, your family was perfectly content with what they had. When they see what you have chosen to discard, they may feel guilty at such blatant waste, but the items they retrieve from your pile just increase the burden of unnecessary items in their home. And we should be ashamed of forcing them to carry this burden. In an overwhelming percentage of cases, it is the mother who retrieves things from her daughter, yet mothers rarely wear the clothes they take. The women I work with, who are in their 50s and 60s, invariably end up discarding or donating their daughters' hand-me-downs without ever wearing them. I think we should avoid creating situations like this where a mother's affection for her daughter becomes a burden. Of course, there's nothing wrong with other family members actually using the things you don't need. If you live with your family, you could ask them, "Is there something you need that you were planning to buy?" before you start tidying. And then if you happen to come across exactly what they need, give it to them as a gift. If you're mad at your family, your room may be the cause. Even if I tidy, the rest of my family just messes things up again. My husband's a pack rat. How can I get him to throw things away? It can be very annoying when your family doesn't cooperate with your attempts to achieve the ideal home. This is something I experienced many times in the past. At one time, I was so absorbed in tidying that cleaning my own room was not enough. I just had to tackle my siblings' rooms and every other space in the house, and I was constantly frustrated by my untidy family. A major cause of distress was the communal storage closet in the middle of the house. To me, more than half of it seemed to be devoted to unused and unnecessary junk. The clothing rods were jammed with outfits I had never seen my mother wear, and suits belonging to my father that were clearly obsolete. Boxes of manga belonging to my brother covered the floor. I would wait until the timing was right and confront the owner with this question: "You don't use this anymore, right?" But the response was either, "Yes, I do," or "I'll get rid of it myself," which they never did. Every time I looked in that closet, I would sigh and complain. Why does everyone keep accumulating things? Can't they see how hard I'm working to keep the house tidy? Fully aware that I was an anomaly when it came to tidying, I was not going to let them defeat me. When my frustration reached the limit, I decided to adopt stealth tactics. I identified items that had not been used for many years, judging by their design, the amount of dust they had gathered, and the way they smelled. I would move those items to the very back of the closet and observe what happened. If no one noticed that they were missing, I disposed of them, one item at a time, just as if I were thinning plants. After 3 months of this strategy, I had managed to dispose of 10 bags worth. In most cases, no one noticed, and life went on as usual. But when the volume reached a certain point, people began to miss a thing or two. When they pointed the finger at me, I responded quite shamelessly. My basic strategy was to play ignorant. "Hey, do you know where my jacket went?" "Nope." If they pressed me further, my next step was denial. "Muddy, are you sure you didn't throw it out?" "Yes, I'm sure." "Oh, well, I wonder where it could be then." If they gave up at this point, my conclusion was that whatever the item had been, it hadn't been worth saving. But if they were no longer fooled, I still wasn't fazed. "I know it was here, Muddy. I saw it with my own eyes just 2 months ago." Far from apologizing for discarding their things without permission, I would retort, "I threw it out for you because you weren't capable of doing it yourself." In retrospect, I must admit that I was pretty arrogant. Once exposed, I was met with a flood of reproach and protest, and, in the end, I was forbidden to tidy anywhere but my own room. If I could, I'd go back and give myself a good smack and make sure that I didn't even consider such a ridiculous campaign. Getting rid of other people's things without permission demonstrates a sad lack of common sense. Although such stealth tactics generally succeed and the items discarded are never missed, the risk of losing your family's trust when you are caught is far too great. Besides, it just isn't right. If you really want your family to tidy up, there is a much easier way to go about it. After I was banned from tidying other people's spaces and had nowhere to turn but my own room, I took a good look around it and was struck by a surprising fact. There were far more items that needed discarding than I had noticed before. A shirt in my closet that I had never worn, along with an outdated skirt that I wouldn't wear again. Books on my shelves that I knew I didn't need. I realized with a shock that I was guilty of exactly the same thing I had been so bitterly accusing my family of doing. Not being in a position to criticize others, I sat down with my garbage bags and focused on tidying my own space. After about 2 weeks, a change began to occur in my family. My brother, who had refused, no matter how much I had complained, to get rid of anything, began a thorough sorting of his belongings. In a single day, he disposed of more than 200 books. Then my parents and my sister gradually began to sort and discard their clothes and accessories. In the end, my whole family was able to keep the house much tidier than before. To quietly work away at disposing of your own excess is actually the best way of dealing with a family that doesn't tidy. As if drawn into your wake, they will begin weeding out unnecessary belongings and tidying without your having to utter a single complaint. It may sound incredible, but when someone starts tidying, it sets off a chain reaction. Cleaning quietly on one's own generates another interesting change: the ability to tolerate a certain level of untidiness among your family members. Once I was satisfied with my own room, I no longer felt the urge to dispose of things belonging to my siblings or parents. When I noticed that communal spaces such as the living room or bathroom were messy, I cleaned them up without a second thought and never bothered to mention it. I have noticed this same change occur in many of my clients as well. If you feel annoyed with your family for being untidy, I urge you to check your own space, especially your storage. You are bound to find things that need to be thrown away. The urge to point out someone else's failure to tidy is usually a sign that you are neglecting to take care of your own space. This is why you should begin by discarding only your own things. You can leave the communal spaces to the end. The first step is to confront your own stuff. What you don't need, your family doesn't either. My sister is 3 years younger than me. Quiet and a bit on the shy side, she prefers to stay inside and draw or read quietly rather than to go out and socialize. Without a doubt, she suffered the most from my research on tidying, serving as my unsuspecting victim. By the time I was a university student, my focus was on discarding, but there were always things that I found hard to dispose of, such as a t-shirt that I really liked but that somehow didn't look right. Unable to bring myself to part with it, I would try the item on repeatedly, standing in front of the mirror, but in the end, would be forced to conclude that it just didn't suit me. If it was brand new, or a gift from my parents, the thought of getting rid of it made me feel very guilty. At times like this, my sister came in very handy. The gift for my sister method seemed the perfect way to cast off such items. When I say gift, I don't mean that I wrapped it up like a present. Far from it. With the unwanted outfit in my hand, I would barge into my sister's room where she lay on her bed reading contentedly. Extracting the book from her hand, I would say, "You want this t-shirt? I'll give it to you if you like." Seeing the puzzled look on her face, I would deal the final blow. "It's brand new and really cute, but if you don't need it, I'll have to throw it away. Are you okay with that?" My poor, mild-mannered sister would have no choice but to say, "I guess I'll take it then." This happened so frequently that my sister, who hardly ever shopped, had a closet jammed to overflowing. Although she did wear some of the clothes I gave her, there were many more that she wore only once, if ever. Yet I continued to give her presents. After all, they were good clothes, and I thought she should be happy to have more. I only realized how wrong I was after I began my consulting business and met a client whom I will call Kay. Kay was in her 20s, worked for a cosmetics company, and lived at home. As we were sorting through her clothes, I began to notice something odd about the choices she was making. Despite the fact that she owned enough clothes to fill one large closet, which is an average-size wardrobe, the number of clothes she chose to keep seemed unnaturally small. Her answer to the question, "Does this spark joy?" was almost always no. After thanking each item for a job well done, I would pass them to her to discard. I couldn't help noticing the look of relief on her face every time she put an outfit in the bag. Examining the collection more closely, I saw that the clothes she chose to keep were mostly casual things like t-shirts, while the ones she discarded were a completely different style, tight skirts and revealing tops. When I asked her about this, she said, "My older sister gave me those." When all the clothes were sorted and she had made her final choice, she murmured, "Look at that. I was surrounded by all this stuff that I didn't even like." Her sister's hand-me-downs had comprised over a third of her wardrobe, but hardly any of these had given her that important thrill of pleasure. Although she had worn them because her sister had given them to her, she had never liked them. To me, this seems tragic, and this is not an isolated case. In my work, the volume discarded by younger sisters is always greater than the volume discarded by older sisters, a phenomenon surely related to the fact that younger children are often accustomed to wearing hand-me-downs. There are two reasons why younger sisters tend to collect clothes they don't really like. One is that it's hard to get rid of something received from family. The other is that they don't really know what they like, which makes it hard to decide whether they should part with it. Because they receive so much clothing from others, they don't really need to shop, and therefore they have less opportunity to develop the instinct for what really inspires joy. Don't misunderstand me. Giving things you can't use to others who can is an excellent idea. Not only is it economical, but it can also be a source of great joy to see these things being enjoyed and treasured by someone close to you. But that is not the same as forcing things onto your family members because you can't bring yourself to discard or donate them. Whether the victim is a sibling, a parent, or a child, this particular custom should be banned. Although my sister never complained, I am sure that she must have had mixed feelings when she accepted my hand-me-downs. Basically, I was simply transferring my guilt at not being able to discard them onto her. In retrospect, that was pretty despicable. If you want to give something away, don't push people to take it unconditionally or pressure them by making them feel guilty. Find out in advance what they like, and if you find something that fits those criteria, then and only then should you show it to them. You can also offer to give it to them on the condition that it is something they would have been willing to pay for. We need to show consideration for others by helping them avoid the burden of owning more than they need or can enjoy. Tidying is a dialogue with oneself.
"Konmari, would you like to come stand under a waterfall?"
I got this invitation from a client, a charming woman who was still an active business manager and an avid skier and hiker at the age of 74. She had been practicing meditation under running water for more than a decade and seemed to really enjoy it. She would casually remark, "I'm off to a waterfall," as if she were going to the spa. Consequently, the place she took me was not a spot for beginners on an introductory tour. Leaving our lodgings at 6 in the morning, we hiked along a mountain path, climbed over fences, and forded a river where the rushing water came up to our knees, until we finally reached a deserted waterfall. But I didn't bring up this subject because I wanted to introduce this peculiar form of recreation. Rather, I found through this experience that there is significant similarity between meditating under a waterfall and tidying. When you stand under a waterfall, the only audible sound is the roar of water. As the cascade pummels your body, the sensation of pain soon disappears and numbness spreads. Then a sensation of heat warms you from the inside out, and you enter a meditative trance. Although I had never tried this form of meditation before, the sensation it generated seemed extremely familiar. It closely resembled what I experience when I am tidying. While not exactly a meditative state, there are times when I am cleaning that I can quietly commune with myself. The work of carefully considering each object I own to see whether it sparks joy inside me is like conversing with myself through the medium of my possessions. For this reason, it is essential to create a quiet space in which to evaluate the things in your life. Ideally, you should not even be listening to music. Sometimes I hear of methods that recommend tidying in time to a catchy song, but personally, I don't encourage this. I feel that noise makes it harder to hear the internal dialogue between the owner and his or her belongings. Listening to the TV is, of course, out of the question. If you need some background noise to relax, choose environmental or ambient music with no lyrics or well-defined melodies. If you want to add momentum to your tidying work, tap the power of the atmosphere in your room rather than relying on music. The best time to start is early morning. The fresh morning air keeps your mind clear and your power of discernment sharp. For this reason, most of my lessons commence in the morning. The earliest lesson I ever conducted began at 6:30, and we were able to clean at twice the usual speed. The clear, refreshed feeling gained after standing under a waterfall can be addictive. Similarly, when you finish putting your space in order, you will be overcome with the urge to do it again. And, unlike waterfall meditation, you don't have to travel long distances over hard terrain to get there. You can enjoy the same effect in your own home. That's pretty special, don't you think? What to do when you can't throw something away. My criterion for deciding to keep an item is that we should feel a thrill of joy when we touch it. But it is human nature to resist throwing something away even when we know that we should. Items that we can't bring ourselves to discard even when they don't inspire joy are a real problem. Human judgment can be divided into two broad types, intuitive and rational. When it comes to selecting what to discard, it is actually our rational judgment that causes trouble. Although intuitively we know that an object has no attraction for us, our reason raises all kinds of arguments for not discarding it, such as, I might need it later, or it's a waste to get rid of it. These thoughts spin round and round in our mind, making it impossible to let go. I am not claiming that it is wrong to hesitate. The inability to decide demonstrates a certain degree of attachment to a particular object. Nor can all decisions be made on intuition alone. But this is precisely why we need to consider each object with care and not be distracted by thoughts of being wasteful. When you come across something that's hard to discard, consider carefully why you have that specific item in the first place. When did you get it, and what meaning did it have for you then? Reassess the role it plays in your life. If, for example, you have some clothes that you bought but never wear, examine them one at a time. Where did you buy that particular outfit and why? If you bought it because you thought it looked cool in the shop, it has fulfilled the function of giving you a thrill when you bought it. Then why did you never wear it? Was it because you realized that it didn't suit you when you tried it on at home? If so, and if you no longer buy clothes of the same style or color, it has fulfilled another important function. It has taught you what doesn't suit you. In fact, that particular article of clothing has already completed its role in your life, and you are free to say, "Thank you for giving me joy when I bought you," or "Thank you for teaching me what doesn't suit me," and let it go. Every object has a different role to play. Not all clothes have come to you to be worn threadbare. It is the same with people. Not every person you meet in life will become a close friend or lover. Some you will find hard to get along with or impossible to like. But these people, too, teach you the precious lesson of who you do like, so that you will appreciate those special people even more. When you come across something that you cannot part with, think carefully about its true purpose in your life. You'll be surprised at how many of the things you possess have already fulfilled their role. By acknowledging their contribution and letting them go with gratitude, you will be able to truly put the things you own and your life in order. In the end, all that will remain are the things that you really treasure. To truly cherish the things that are important to you, you must first discard those that have outlived their purpose. To get rid of what you no longer need is neither wasteful nor shameful. Can you truthfully say that you treasure something buried so deeply in a closet or drawer that you have forgotten its existence? If things had feelings, they would certainly not be happy. Free them from the prison to which you have relegated them. Help them leave that deserted isle to which you have exiled them. Let them go, with gratitude. Not only you, but your things as well, will feel clear and refreshed when you are done tidying. 3. Tidying by category works like magic. Tidying order. Follow the correct order of categories. The door opens with a click, and a woman looks at me somewhat anxiously. Hello. My clients almost always seem a bit tense the first time I visit their home. As they have already met me several times, this tenseness stems not from shyness, but more from the need to brace themselves for a major challenge. Do you think it's really possible to clean up my house? There's no place to even put your feet in here. I don't see how I can really tidy completely in such a short time. You said that none of your clients have ever suffered rebound. But what if I'm the first? Their nervous excitement is almost palpable, but I know without a doubt that every one of them will do fine. Even those who are lazy or messy by nature, even people who have descended from generations of slobs or who are excessively busy, can learn to clean properly if they use the KonMari method. Let me share a secret. Putting your house in order is fun. The process of assessing how you feel about the things you own, identifying those that have fulfilled their purpose, expressing your gratitude, and bidding them farewell, is really about examining your inner self, a rite of passage to a new life. The yardstick by which you judge is your intuitive sense of attraction, and therefore there's no need for complex theories or numerical data. All you need to do is follow the right order. So arm yourself with plenty of garbage bags and prepare to have fun. Start with clothes, then move on to books, papers, komono, miscellany, and finally things with sentimental value. If you reduce what you own in this order, your work will proceed with surprising ease. By starting with the easy things first and leaving the hardest for last, you can gradually hone your decision-making skills, so that by the end, it seems simple. For the first category, clothing, I recommend dividing further into the following subcategories to increase efficiency. Tops, shirts, sweaters, etc. Bottoms, pants, skirts, etc. Clothes that should be hung, jackets, coats, suits, etc. Socks, underwear, bags, handbags, messenger bags, etc. Accessories, scarves, belts, hats, etc. Clothes for specific events, swimsuits, kimonos, uniforms, etc. Shoes. And yes, I include handbags and shoes as clothing. Why is this the optimal order? I am actually not sure why, but based on the experience I've gained devoting half my life to tidying, I can tell you for certain that it works. Believe me, if you follow this order, you'll speed through the work and achieve visible results surprisingly quickly. Moreover, because you will keep only the things you truly love, your energy and joy will increase. You may be physically tired, but it feels so good to get rid of unnecessary items that you will find it hard to stop. The important point, however, is deciding what to keep. What things will bring you joy if you keep them as part of your life? Pick them as if you were identifying items you loved from a showcase in your favorite store. Once you've grasped the basics, put all your clothes in one heap, take them in your hand one by one, and ask yourself quietly, does this spark joy? Your tidying festival has begun. Clothing. Place every item of clothing in the house on the floor. The first step is to check every closet and dresser in the house and gather all your clothes in one spot. Don't leave a single wardrobe or dresser drawer unopened. Make sure you have gathered every last piece of clothing. When my clients think they have finished, I always ask them this question. Are you sure there's not a single piece of clothing left in the house? Then I add, you can forget about any clothes you find after this. They'll automatically go in the discard pile. I let them know I'm quite serious. I have no intention of letting them keep anything found after the sorting is done. The response is usually, oh, wait, I think there might be something in my husband's closet. Or, I might have hung something in the hallway. Followed by one last dash around the house and a few extra items added to the pile. This ultimatum sounds a bit like the automatic withdrawal system for paying bills at the bank, but when my clients know there's a firm deadline, they search their memories one more time because they don't want to lose clothes without being given a chance to decide. Although I rarely have to follow through on my threat, if someone doesn't remember an item at this point, it obviously doesn't inspire a thrill of joy, and therefore I am quite ruthless. The only exception is clothes that happen to be in the laundry. When all the clothes have been gathered together, the pile of tops alone is usually knee-deep. The term tops includes clothes for every season, from t-shirts and camisoles to knitted sweaters. The average number of items in this initial pile is around 160. Confronted by their first obstacle in the tidying process, most people are overwhelmed by the sheer volume of what they actually own. At this point, I usually say, let's start with off-season clothes. I have a good reason for choosing off-season clothing for their first foray into this tidying gala. It's the easiest category for tuning into one's intuition concerning what feels good. If they start with clothes they are currently using, clients are more likely to think, it doesn't spark joy, but I just wore it yesterday. Or, if I don't have any clothes left to wear, what am I going to do? This makes it harder for them to make an objective decision. Because off-season clothes are not imminently necessary, it is much easier to apply the simple criterion of whether or not they bring you joy. There's one question I recommend asking when you select off-season clothes. Do I want to see this outfit again next time it's in season? Or, to rephrase it, would I want to wear this right away if the temperature suddenly changed? Do I want to see it again? Well, not necessarily. If that's how you feel, throw it in the discard or donate pile. And if you got a lot of wear out of it last season, don't forget to express your appreciation. You might fear that you'll have no clothes left if you use this standard, but don't worry. It may seem as if you have discarded an awful lot, but as long as you are choosing clothes that give you pleasure, you'll be left with the amount you need. Once you have gotten the knack of choosing what you love, you can move on to each subcategory of in-season clothing. The most important points to remember are these. Make sure you gather every piece of clothing in the house, and be sure to handle each one. Loungewear. Downgrading to loungewear is taboo. It seems a waste to get rid of something that is still perfectly usable, especially if you bought it yourself. In cases like this, my clients often ask me if they can keep clothes they know they'll never wear outside and use them as loungewear. If I said yes, the pile of loungewear would grow ever larger without any decrease in the overall volume of clothes. Having said that, I admit that I myself once did the same thing with clothes I knew I'd never wear to go out. Pilled cardigans, outdated blouses, dresses that didn't suit me or that I just never wore. It wasn't long before I had developed the habit of demoting clothes like these to loungewear, rather than discarding them. Yet 9 out of 10 times I never wore them. I soon discovered that many of my clients also had collections of dormant loungewear. When asked why they don't wear them, their answers are very revealing. I can't relax in them. It seems a waste to wear this inside when it was really for going out. I don't like it. And so on. In other words, these cast-offs are not really loungewear at all. Calling them that merely delays parting with clothes that don't spark any joy. There are stores dedicated solely to loungewear products, and the design, material, and cut are all aimed at relaxation. Obviously, it is a completely different genre from what we wear outside. Cotton t-shirts are probably the only type of regular clothing that could be reused in this category. To me, it doesn't seem right to keep clothes we don't enjoy for relaxing around the house. This time at home is still a precious part of living. Its value should not change just because nobody sees us. So, starting today, break the habit of downgrading clothes that don't thrill you to loungewear. The real waste is not discarding clothes you don't like, but wearing them even though you are striving to create the ideal space for your ideal lifestyle. Precisely because no one is there to see you, it makes far more sense to reinforce a positive self-image by wearing clothes you love. The same goes for pajamas. If you are a woman, try wearing something elegant as nightwear. The worst thing you can do is to wear a sloppy sweatsuit. I occasionally meet people who dress like this all the time, whether waking or sleeping. If sweatpants are your everyday attire, you'll end up looking like you belong in them, which is not very attractive. What you wear in the house does impact your self-image. Clothing storage. Fold it right and solve your storage problems. After the selection process, my clients are usually left with only a third to a quarter of the clothes they started out with. As the clothes they want to keep are still piled in the middle of the floor, it is time to start putting them away. Before I go on to that step, however, let me tell you a story. I once had a client with a problem that I just could not understand. A woman in her 50s, she told me during our initial interview that she didn't have enough closet space in her house for all her clothes. From the floor plan, however, it was clear not only that she had 2 full closets to herself, but that those closets were 1.5 times larger than average. Although this should have been plenty of space, she also had a clothing stand with 3 rods full of clothes. Amazed, I roughly estimated that she must have more than 2,000 outfits in her wardrobe. It was only when I visited her home that I finally understood. Upon opening her wall-length closet, my jaw dropped. It was like looking at the crowded racks at the dry cleaners. Hanging neatly on hangers were not just coats and skirts, but also t-shirts, sweaters, purses, and even underwear. My client immediately launched into a detailed explanation of her hanger collection. This type is made especially for knits so that they don't slip off, and these are handmade. I bought them in Germany. After a 5-minute lecture, she beamed at me and said, "Clothes don't get wrinkled if you hang them up, and they last longer too, right?" Upon further questioning, I discovered that she did not fold any of her clothes at all. There are 2 storage methods for clothes. One is to put them on hangers and hang from a rod, and the other is to fold them and put them away in drawers. I can understand why people might be attracted to hanging their clothes. It seems like far less work. However, I strongly recommend folding as the main storage method. But it's a pain to fold clothes and put them away in the drawer. It's much easier to pop them on a hanger and stick them in the closet. If that's what you're thinking, then you haven't discovered the true impact of folding. Hanging just can't compete with folding for saving space. Although it depends somewhat on the thickness of the clothes in question, you can fit from 20 to 40 pieces of folded clothing in the same amount of space required to hang 10. The client had only slightly more clothes than average. If she had folded them, she would have had no problem fitting them into her storage space. By neatly folding your clothes, you can solve almost every problem related to storage. But that is not the only effect of folding. The real benefit is that you must handle each piece of clothing. As you run your hands over the cloth, you pour your energy into it. The Japanese word for healing is teate, which literally means to apply hands. The term originated prior to the development of modern medicine, when people believed that placing one's hand on an injury promoted healing. We know that gentle physical contact from a parent, such as holding hands, patting a child on the head, and hugging, has a calming effect on children. Likewise, a firm but gentle massage by human hands does much more to loosen knotted muscles than being pummeled by a massage machine. The energy that flows from the person's hands into our skin seems to heal both body and soul. The same is true for clothing. When we take our clothes in our hands and fold them neatly, we are, I believe, transmitting energy, which has a positive effect on our clothes. Folding properly pulls the cloth taut and erases wrinkles, and makes the material stronger and more vibrant. Clothes that have been neatly folded have a resilience and sheen that can be discerned immediately, clearly distinguishing them from those that have been haphazardly stuffed in a drawer. The act of folding is far more than making clothes compact for storage. It is an act of caring, an expression of love and appreciation for the way these clothes support your lifestyle. Therefore, when we fold, we should put our heart into it, thanking our clothes for protecting our bodies. In addition, folding clothes after they have been washed and dried is an opportunity to really notice them in all their detail. For example, we might spot places where the cloth has frayed or see that a certain piece of clothing is becoming worn out. Folding is really a form of dialogue with our wardrobe. Japanese traditional clothing, kimono and yukata, were always folded into rectangles to fit perfectly into drawers designed to their uniform dimensions. I don't think there is any other culture in the world where storage units and clothing were matched so precisely. Japanese people quickly grasp the pleasure that comes from folding clothes, almost as if they are genetically programmed for this task. How to fold. The best way to fold for perfect appearance. The laundry is done and ready to be put away, but this is where many people get stuck. Folding seems like extra work, especially as the clothes will be worn again soon anyway. Many people can't be bothered, and soon they have a heap of clothes on the floor. They fall into the daily routine of picking something out of the pile to wear while the mound continues to grow, eventually spreading from one corner to take over the rest of the room. If this describes you, don't worry. None of my clients have ever known how to fold clothes properly when they began taking my lessons. In fact, quite a few of them declared that it was their policy never to fold their clothes. I have opened closets so full that the clothes looked like they had been hardened in a jelly mold, and I have witnessed drawers filled with clothes rolled and twisted like noodles. You would think my clients had never seen the first letter of the word fold, but once they finish my course, all of them, without exception, have told me, "Folding is fun!" One of my clients, a young woman in her 20s, hated folding so much that her mother used to come and do it for her. Through the course, however, she came to love it, and even taught her mother how to fold properly. Once you have mastered this technique, you will actually enjoy doing it every day, and will find it a handy skill for the rest of your life. In fact, to go through life without knowing how to fold is a huge loss. The first step is to visualize what the inside of your drawer will look like when you finish. The goal should be to organize the content so that you can see where every item is at a glance, just as you can see the spines of the books on your bookshelves. The key is to store things standing up rather than laid flat. Some people mimic store displays, folding each piece of clothing into a large square and then arranging them one on top of the other in layers. This is great for temporary sales displays in stores, but not what we should be aiming for at home, where our relationship with these clothes is long-term. To store clothes standing, they must be made compact, which means more folds. Some people believe that more folds means more wrinkles, but that is not the case. It is not the number of folds, but rather the amount of pressure applied that causes wrinkling. Even lightly folded clothes will wrinkle if they are stored in a pile, because the weight of the clothes acts like a press. Think of the difference between folding one sheet of paper as opposed to 100 sheets in one go. It is much harder to get a sharp crease when folding a whole stack of paper at one time. Once you have an image of what the inside of your drawers will look like, you can begin folding. The goal is to fold each piece of clothing into a simple, smooth rectangle. First, fold each lengthwise side of the garment toward the center, such as the left hand, then right hand, sides of a shirt, and tuck the sleeves in to make a long rectangular shape. It doesn't matter how you fold the sleeves. Next, pick up one short end of the rectangle and fold it toward the other short end. Then fold again, in the same manner, in halves or in thirds. The number of folds should be adjusted so that the folded clothing when standing on edge fits the height of the drawer. This is the basic principle that will ultimately allow your clothes to be stacked on edge, side by side, so that when you pull open your drawer you can see the edge of every item inside. If you find that the end result is the right shape but too loose and floppy to stand up, it's a sign that your way of folding doesn't match the type of clothing. Every piece of clothing has its own sweet spot, where it feels just right, a folded state that best suits that item. This will differ depending on the type of material and size of the clothing, and therefore you will need to adjust your method until you find what works. This isn't difficult. By adjusting the height when folded so that it stands properly, you'll reach the sweet spot surprisingly easily. Folding goes even more smoothly if you fold thin, soft material more tightly, reducing it to a small width and height, and thick, fluffy materials less. In cases where one end of the piece of clothing is thicker than the other, it also helps to keep the thinner end in your hand while folding. There is nothing more satisfying than finding that sweet spot. The piece of clothing keeps its shape when stood on edge and feels just right when held in your hand. It's like a sudden revelation. So this is how you always wanted to be folded. A historical moment in which your mind and the piece of clothing connect. I love the way my clients' faces light up at that moment. Arranging clothes. The secret to energizing your closet. It feels great to open up your closet and see the clothes you love arranged neatly on hangers. But my clients' closets are often such a mess that it takes courage just to open them, and, once open, it's impossible to find anything in them. There are two possible causes. The first is that the closet is simply too full. One of my clients had jammed so many clothes inside that it took her 3 full minutes to extract a single outfit. The hangers were so closely packed that when, after much grunting and pulling, she finally managed to extract an outfit, the clothes on either side popped out with it like bread from a toaster. I could see why she had not used that closet for several years. This is an extreme example, but it is true that most people store far more than necessary in their closets. This is one reason I recommend folding whatever clothes you can. Of course, there are some types of clothing that are better stored on hangers. These include coats, suits, jackets, skirts, and dresses. My standard is this: hang any clothes that look like they would be happier hung up, such as those made with soft materials that flutter in the breeze or highly tailored cuts, which protest at being folded. These we should hang willingly. The other cause of a messy closet is lack of knowledge. Many people simply don't know how to organize clothes on hangers. The most basic rule is to hang clothes in the same category side by side, dividing your closet into a jacket section, a suit section, and so on. Clothes, like people, can relax more freely when in the company of others who are very similar in type, and therefore organizing them by category helps them feel more comfortable and secure. You can literally transform your closet just by applying this principle. Of course, many people insist that even when they organize their clothes by category, it isn't long before their closets are messy again. So let me introduce a secret for maintaining the neatness of closets that you work hard to organize. Arrange your clothes so that they rise to the right. Take a moment to draw an arrow rising toward the right, and then another descending to the right. You can do this on paper or just trace them in the air. Did you notice that when you draw an arrow rising to the right, it makes you feel lighter? Lines that slope up to the right make people feel comfortable. By using this principle when you organize your closet, you can make the contents look far more exciting. To do so, hang heavy items on the left side of the closet and light items on the right. Heavy items include those with length, those made from heavier material, and those that are dark in color. As you move toward the right side of the closet, the length of the clothing grows shorter, the material thinner, and the color lighter. By category, coats would be on the far left, followed by dresses, jackets, pants, skirts, and blouses. This is the basic order, but depending on the trends in your wardrobe, what classifies as heavy in each category will differ. Use your intuition to create a balance that makes it appear as if the clothes are sloping up to the right. In addition, organize the clothes within each category from heavy to light. When you stand in front of a closet that has been reorganized so that the clothes rise to the right, you will feel your heart beat faster and the cells in your body buzz with energy. This energy will also be transmitted to your clothes. Even when you close the closet door, your room will feel fresher. Once you have experienced this, you'll never lose the habit of organizing by category. Some may question whether paying attention to such details can possibly cause such a change. But why waste your time doubting if incorporating this exciting magic into all your storage spaces could keep your room tidy? It will only take you 10 minutes to rearrange your closet by category, so trust me and give it a try. But don't forget that you first need to reduce your wardrobe to only those clothes that you really love. Storing socks. Treat your socks and stockings with respect. Have you ever had the experience where you thought that what you were doing was a good thing but later learned that it had hurt someone? At the time, you were totally unconcerned, oblivious to the other person's feelings. This is somewhat similar to the way many of us treat our socks. I visited the home of a client in her 50s. As always, we started with her clothes. We moved through her wardrobe at a smooth pace, finished the underwear, and were ready to start organizing her socks. But when she pulled open her sock drawer, I could not suppress a gasp. It was full of potato-like lumps that rolled about. She had folded back the tops to form balls and tied her stockings tightly in the middle. I was speechless. Dressed in a crisp white apron, my client smiled at me and said, "It's easy to pick out what I need this way, and it's quite simple to put them away as well, don't you think?" Although I frequently run into this attitude during my lessons, it never fails to astonish me. Let me state here and now, never, ever tie up your stockings. Never, ever ball up your socks. I pointed to the balled-up socks. Look at them carefully. This should be a time for them to rest. Do you really think they can get any rest like that? That's right. The socks and stockings stored in your drawer are essentially on holiday. They take a brutal beating in their daily work, trapped between your foot and your shoe, enduring pressure and friction to protect your precious feet. The time they spend in your drawer is their only chance to rest. But if they are folded over, balled up, or tied, they are always in a state of tension, their fabric stretched and their elastic pulled. They roll about and bump into each other every time the drawer is opened and closed. Any socks and stockings unfortunate enough to get pushed to the back of the drawer are often forgotten for so long that their elastic stretches beyond recovery. When the owner finally discovers them and puts them on, it will be too late and they will be relegated to the garbage. What treatment could be worse than this? Let's begin with how to fold your stockings. If you've tied them up, start by undoing the knot. Lay the toes one on top of the other and fold the stocking in half lengthwise. Then fold it into thirds, making sure that the toes are inside, not outside, and that the waistband protrudes slightly at the top. Finally, roll the stocking up toward the waistband. If the waistband is on the outside when you finish, you've done it right. Fold knee-high stockings the same way. With thicker material, such as tights, it is easier to roll if you fold them in half rather than in thirds. The point is that the stocking should be firm and stable when you've finished, much like a sushi roll. When you store the stockings in your drawer, arrange them on end so that the swirl is visible. If you are storing them in plastic drawers, I recommend putting them into a cardboard box first, so that they don't slip and unroll, and putting the box into the drawer. A shoebox is the perfect size for a stocking divider. This method is a win-win solution. It allows you to see how many stockings you have at a single glance, protects your stockings from damage, and keeps them smooth and unwrinkled so that they are easier to put on. And it makes your stockings much happier too. Folding socks is even easier. If you've folded back the tops, start by unfolding them. Place one sock on top of the other and follow the same principles as those for folding clothing. For low-cut socks that cover just the feet, folding twice is enough. For ankle socks, 3 times. For knee socks and over-knee socks, 4 to 6 times. You can adjust the number of folds to achieve the height that best suits the drawer. It's easy. Just aim to make a simple rectangle, the key to folding. Store the socks on edge, just as you did for clothing. You'll be amazed at how little space you need compared to your potato ball days, and you'll notice your socks breathing a sigh of relief at being untied. When I see high school students wearing high socks that are loose at the top, I long to tell them how to fold their socks properly. Seasonal clothes. Eliminate the need to store off-season clothes. June in Japan is the rainy season. It is also traditionally the month for Kondo-Prt, when people change to summer clothes. This is preceded by several weeks of cleaning and packing away winter clothes and bringing out summer clothes. Whenever this time of year approaches, it reminds me that I used to do this too. For years, however, I have not bothered to put away off-season clothes. The custom of Kondo-Prt originated in China and was introduced to Japan as a court custom during the Heian period, 794 to 1185 AD. It was only in the late 19th century, when workers and students began to wear uniforms, that the custom was introduced in businesses and schools. Companies and schools officially switched to the summer uniform at the beginning of June, and to the winter uniform at the beginning of October. In other words, this rule was only applied within organizations, and its extension to the ordinary home was not really necessary. But like every other Japanese, I, too, was convinced that I had to store and unpack seasonal clothing twice a year, in June and October. I spent these 2 months busily emptying and refilling the contents of closets and drawers. To be honest, I found this custom a nuisance. If a dress I wanted to wear was stored away in a box on the top shelf of the closet, it seemed like far too much trouble to get it down and dig it out. Instead, I would compromise and wear something else. There were some years when I didn't manage to unpack my summer clothes until July, and I would realize that in the meantime I had bought clothes similar to those I already owned. Often, as soon as I got out my summer clothes, the weather would suddenly turn cold again. The custom of storing seasonal clothes is behind the times. With the introduction of air conditioning and heating, our homes are less subject to the weather outside. It's not uncommon now to see people wearing t-shirts indoors, even in winter. So it's time to abandon this custom and keep all our clothes ready to be used year-round, regardless of the season. My clients love this approach, especially because they can grasp at all times exactly what clothes they have. No difficult techniques are required. All you need to do is organize your clothes on the premise that you aren't going to put off-season clothes in storage. The trick is not to over-categorize. Divide your clothes roughly into cotton-like and wool-like materials when you put them in the drawer. Categorizing by season, summer, winter, fall, and spring, or by activity, such as work and leisure, should be avoided because it is too vague. If my client's space is limited, I have them store only small, specific off-season items, such as bathing suits and sun hats for the summer season, and mufflers, mittens, and earmuffs for the winter season. Although not a small item, winter coats can also be put away in the back of the closet during the off-season. For those of you who still don't have enough space, let me share a few tips for storing your off-season clothes. Many people store their off-season clothes in plastic cases with lids. These, however, are the hardest type of storage units to use effectively. Once in the closet, something is bound to be placed on top of it, and pulling the case out and opening it up seems like too much extra work. In the end, it is all too easy to forget the case is even there until the season is almost over. If you are planning to buy storage units in the near future, I recommend that you get a set of drawers instead. Be careful not to bury clothes in the cupboard even if they are off-season. Clothes that have been shut up for half a year look wilted, as if they have been stifled. Instead, let in some light and air occasionally. Open the drawer and run your hands over the contents. Let them know you care and look forward to wearing them when they are next in season. This kind of communication helps your clothes stay vibrant and keeps your relationship with them alive longer. Storing books. Put all your books on the floor. Once you have finished organizing and storing your clothes, it's time to move on to books. Books are one of 3 things that people find hardest to let go. Many people say that books are one thing they just can't part with, regardless of whether they are avid readers or not. But the real problem is actually the way in which they part with them. One of my clients, a woman in her 30s who worked for a foreign consulting firm, loved books. She had read not only every business book, but also a broad range of novels and manga. Naturally, her room was filled with books. She had 3 large ceiling-height bookshelves full of books, plus about 20 waist-high towers of books piled precariously on the floor. When walking through the room, I had to sidestep and twist to avoid bumping into them. I said to her what I say to all my clients. Please start by removing every book from your shelves and putting them all on the floor. Her eyes grew round. All of them? There's an awful lot. Yes, I know. All of them, please. But... She hesitated for a moment as though searching for words before continuing. Wouldn't it be easier to choose them while they're still on the shelf and I can see the titles? Books are usually arranged in rows in bookcases so that their titles are clearly visible. So it does seem to make more sense to weed out those you don't want when you can see them. Not only that, but books are heavy. Taking them all off the shelf only to put them back on again seems like a waste of effort. Even so, do not skip this step. Remove all the books from your bookcases. You cannot judge whether or not a book really grabs you when it's still on the shelf. Like clothes or any other belongings, books that have been left untouched on the shelf for a long time are dormant. Or perhaps I should say they're invisible. Although in plain sight, they remain unseen, just like a praying mantis still in the grass, merging with its surroundings. Have you ever experienced that jolt of surprise when you suddenly notice it there? If you ask yourself, does this spark joy? When you are just looking at the things on your shelves or in your drawers, the question won't mean much to you. To truly decide whether you want to keep something or to dispose of it, you must take your things out of hibernation. Even the piles of books already on the floor will be easier to assess if you move them to a different part of the floor or restack them. Just like the gentle shake we use to wake someone up, we can stimulate our belongings by physically moving them, exposing them to fresh air and making them conscious. While helping my clients tidy their homes or offices, I stand in front of the mound of books they have piled on the floor and clap my hands, or I gently stroke the book covers. Although my clients look at me strangely at first, they are inevitably surprised at how quickly and precisely they are able to choose after this. They can see exactly what they need and don't need. It is much harder to choose books when they are still on the shelf, which means you will have to repeat the process later. If there are too many books to arrange on the floor all at one time, I ask my clients to divide them into 4 broad categories. General, books you read for pleasure. Practical, references, cookbooks, etc. Visual, photograph collections, etc. Magazines. Once you have piled your books, take them in your hand one by one and decide whether you want to keep or discard each one. The criterion is, of course, whether or not it gives you a thrill of pleasure when you touch it. Remember, I said when you touch it. Make sure you don't start reading it. Reading clouds your judgment. Instead of asking yourself what you feel, you'll start asking whether you need that book or not. Imagine what it would be like to have a bookshelf filled only with books that you really love. Isn't that image spellbinding? For someone who loves books, what greater happiness could there be? Unread books. Sometime means never. The most common reason for not discarding a book is, I might read it again. Take a moment to count the number of favorite books that you have actually read more than once. How many are there? For some, it may be as few as 5, while for some exceptional readers, it may be as many as 100. People who reread that many, however, are usually people in specific professions, such as scholars and authors. Very rarely will you find ordinary people like me who read so many books. Let's face it, in the end, you are going to read very few of your books again. As with clothing, we need to stop and think about what purpose these books serve. Books are essentially paper, sheets of paper printed with letters and bound together. Their true purpose is to be read, to convey the information to their readers. It's the information they contain that has meaning. There is no meaning in their just being on your shelves. You read books for the experience of reading. Books you have read have already been experienced, and their content is inside you, even if you don't remember. So when deciding which books to keep, forget about whether you think you'll read it again or whether you've mastered what's inside. Instead, take each book in your hand and decide whether it moves you or not. Keep only those books that will make you happy just to see them on your shelves, the ones that you really love. That includes this book, too. If you don't feel any joy when you hold it in your hand, I would rather you discard it. What about books that you have started but not yet finished reading? Or books you bought but have not yet started? What should be done with books like these that you intend to read sometime? The internet has made it easy to purchase books, but as a consequence, it seems to me that people have far more unread books than they once did, ranging from 3 to more than 40. It is not uncommon for people to purchase a book and then buy another one not long after, before they have read the first one. Unread books accumulate. The problem with books that we intend to read sometime is that they are far harder to part with than ones we have already read. I remember one incident where I was giving a lesson to a CEO on how to clean his office. His bookshelves were filled with difficult-sounding titles that you might expect a company president to read, such as classics by authors like Drucker and Carnegie, as well as the latest bestsellers. It was like walking into a bookstore. When I saw his collection, I had a sinking feeling. Sure enough, when he began sorting them, he put one book after another on his to-keep pile, announcing that they were still unread. By the time he finished, he still had 50 volumes and had barely made a dent in the original collection. When I asked why he kept them, he gave the classic answer from my list of most probable answers: because I might want to read it sometime. I'm afraid that from personal experience I can tell you right now, sometime never comes. If you missed your chance to read a particular book, even if it was recommended to you or is one you have been intending to read for ages, this is your chance to let it go. You may have wanted to read it when you bought it, but if you haven't read it by now, the book's purpose was to teach you that you didn't need it. There's no need to finish reading books that you only got halfway through. Their purpose was to be read halfway. So get rid of all those unread books. It will be far better for you to read the book that really grabs you right now than one that you left to gather dust for years. People with large book collections are almost always diligent learners. This is why it's not unusual to see many references and study guides in my clients' bookcases. Those most commonly left unread in Japan are English textbooks, practical English conversation handbooks for travelers, and useful business English phrase books. Handbooks and guides for acquiring qualifications are often incredibly diverse, ranging from bookkeeping, real estate, and computer qualifications to aromatherapy and color coordinating. Sometimes I am amazed at the type of qualifications my clients are interested in. Many of my clients also keep their old textbooks all the way back to junior high and notebooks for practicing writing skills. So if, like many of my clients, you have any books that fall into this category, I urge you to stop insisting that you will use them someday. Get rid of them today. Why? Because the odds are very low that you'll ever read them. Of all my clients, less than 15% put such books to use. When they explain why they hang on to them, their answers are all about what they intend to do someday. I'd like to study this someday. I'll study it when I have a little more time. I thought it would be useful to master English. I wanted to study bookkeeping because I'm in management. If you haven't done what you intended to do yet, donate or recycle that book. Only by discarding it will you be able to test how passionate you are about that subject. If your feelings don't change after discarding it, then you're fine as is. If you want the book so badly after getting rid of it that you're willing to buy another copy, then buy one, and this time read and study it. Books to keep. Those that belong in the Hall of Fame. I now keep my collection of books to about 30 volumes at any one time, but in the past, I found it very hard to discard books because I love them. The first time I sorted through my library using the yardstick of whether or not they gave me joy, I had about 100 volumes left in my bookcase. Although this is not excessive compared to the average, I felt that I could still reduce. One day I decided to take a closer look at what I had. I started with books that I considered taboo to discard. In my case, first on the list was Alice in Wonderland, which I have read repeatedly since grade 1. Books like this, which fall into one's personal book hall of fame, are simple to identify. Next, I looked at books that inspired pleasure but didn't quite make it into the Hall of Fame. As time passes, the content of this category naturally changes, but these books are the ones I definitely want to keep right now. At that time, one of these was The Art of Discarding, which first opened my eyes to tidying, although I no longer have it. Books that provide this degree of pleasure are also fine to keep. The most difficult ones are those that give you moderate pleasure, those with words or phrases that moved your heart and that you might want to read again. These are the hardest to discard. Although I felt no pressure to get rid of them, I could not overlook the fact that they only gave me moderate pleasure, particularly not when I was pursuing perfection in the field of tidying. I began to search for a way to let them go without regret, and eventually hit upon what I called the bulk reduction method. Realizing that what I really wanted to keep was not the book, but certain information or specific words it contained, I decided that if I kept only what was necessary, I should be able to part with the rest. My idea was to copy the sentences that inspired me into a notebook. Over time, I thought, this would become a personal collection of my favorite words of wisdom. It might be fun to read it over in the future and trace the path my interests had led me. With great excitement, I pulled out a notebook I liked and launched my project. I began by underlining the places I wanted to copy. Then I wrote the title in my notebook and began transcribing. Once I started, however, I realized that this process was far too much work. It takes time to transcribe, and if I was going to be able to read those words in the future, my handwriting had to be neat. To copy 10 quotations from a single book would take at least half an hour, and that was a low estimate. The thought of doing this for 40 books made me dizzy. My next plan was to use a copy machine. I would copy the sections I wanted to keep and cut and paste them into my notebook. This, I thought, should be much quicker and easier. But when I tried it, it was even more work. I finally decided to rip the relevant page out of the book. Pasting pages into a notebook was also a pain, so I simplified the process by slipping them into a file instead. This only took 5 minutes per book, and I managed to get rid of 40 books and keep the words I liked. I was extremely pleased with the results. 2 years after launching this bulk reduction method, I had a sudden flash of realization. I had never once looked at the file I created. All that effort had just been to ease my own conscience. Recently, I have noticed that having fewer books actually increases the impact of the information I read. I recognize necessary information much more easily. Many of my clients, particularly those who have disposed of a substantial number of books and papers, have also mentioned this. For books, timing is everything. The moment you first encounter a particular book is the right time to read it. To avoid missing that moment, I recommend that you keep your collection small. Sorting papers. Rule of thumb: discard everything. Once you've finished organizing your books, it's time to move on to your papers. For example, the letter holder bursting with envelopes that hangs on your wall, the school announcement stuck to your fridge, the unanswered invitation to your school reunion lying by the phone, the newspapers that have accumulated on your table over the last few days. There are several spots within the house where papers tend to pile up like snowdrifts. Although the general assumption is that there are far fewer papers in the home than in the office, this is actually not true. The minimum amount of paper my clients discard or recycle is two 45-liter bags. The maximum, so far, is 15 bags. I don't know how many times I hear my clients' paper shredders jam. It is extremely difficult to manage such a large volume of paper, yet I occasionally meet some amazing clients whose filing skills take my breath away. When I ask, "How are you managing your papers?" their explanations are extremely thorough. Papers related to the children go in this file. That file there is my recipe file. Magazine clippings go in here, and manuals for my electric appliances go in this box. They have categorized their papers in such fine detail that my mind sometimes wanders off in the middle of their discourse. I confess, I hate filing papers. I never use multiple files or write labels. This system perhaps works better in an office setting, where many people use the same documents, but there is absolutely no need to use such a detailed filing system in the home. My basic principle for sorting papers is to throw them all away. My clients are stunned when I say this, but there is nothing more annoying than papers. After all, they will never inspire joy, no matter how carefully you keep them. For this reason, I recommend you dispose of anything that does not fall into one of the three categories: currently in use, needed for a limited period of time, or must be kept indefinitely. The term papers, by the way, does not include papers with sentimental value like old love letters or diaries. Attempting to sort these will slow down your pace drastically. Limit yourself at first to sorting papers that give you no thrill at all, and finish the job in one go. Letters from friends and lovers can be left for when you tackle sentimental items. Once you've gone through those papers that don't evoke any pleasure, what should you do with the ones that you've decided to keep? My filing method is extremely simple. I divide them into two categories: papers to be saved and papers that need to be dealt with. Although my policy is to get rid of all papers, these are the only categories I make for those that can't be discarded. Letters requiring a reply, forms that need to be submitted, a newspaper that I intend to read. Make a special corner for papers like these that need to be dealt with. Make sure that you keep all such papers in one spot only. Never let them spread to other parts of the house. I recommend using a vertical organizer in which papers can be stored standing up and designating a specific place for it. All papers requiring attention can be placed in here without separating them. As for papers that must be saved, these I subdivide according to the frequency of use. Again, the way I divide them is not complicated. I organize them into infrequently used papers and more frequently used papers. Infrequently used papers include insurance policies, guarantees, and leases. Unfortunately, these must be kept automatically, regardless of the fact that they spark no particular joy in your heart. As you will almost never need to access papers in this category, you don't have to put a lot of effort into storing them. I recommend putting them all into a single ordinary clear plastic folder without worrying about further categorization. The other subcategory consists of papers that you will take out and look at more frequently, such as the outlines of seminars or newspaper clippings. These are meaningless unless they are stored in a way that's easy to access and read, which is why I recommend inserting them into the book-like pages of a clear plastic file folder. This category is the trickiest of them all. Although papers like this are not really necessary, they tend to multiply. Reducing the volume of this category is key to organizing your papers. Papers are organized into only three categories: needs attention, should be saved, contractual documents, and should be saved, others. The point is to keep all papers in one category in the same container or folder, and to purposely refrain from subdividing them any further by content. In other words, you only need 3 containers or folders. Don't forget that the needs attention box ought to be empty. If there are papers in it, be aware that this means you have left things undone in your life that require your attention. Although I have never managed to completely empty my needs attention box, this is the goal to which we should aspire. All about papers. How to organize troublesome papers. My basic policy is to discard all papers, but there are always going to be some that are hard to get rid of. Let's consider here how to tackle these. Lecture materials. Those who enjoy studying are quite likely to attend seminars or courses in various subjects, such as aromatherapy, logical thinking, or marketing. The recent trend in Japan is to utilize time in the early morning to take seminars. The content and time frame are broadening, giving people a wide choice. For the participants, the materials diligently produced by the lecturer are akin to a badge of honor, and as such they are hard to part with. But when I visit the homes of these ardent learners, I find that these materials usurp much of the room, making their space oppressive. One of my clients was a woman in her 30s who worked for an advertising company. The moment I entered her room, I felt like I was in an office. My eyes were assaulted by rows of files with carefully printed titles. "These are all materials from the seminars I took," she told me. A self-confessed seminar fanatic, she had saved and filed the materials from every seminar she had ever attended. People often insist, "I want to restudy these materials sometime," but most never do so. Moreover, the majority of them usually have materials for multiple seminars on the same or similar subjects. Why? Because what they learned at the seminars did not stick. I am not saying this as a criticism, but merely to point out why it isn't worth keeping materials from past seminars. If the content is not put into practice, such courses are meaningless. A seminar's value begins the moment we start attending, and the key to extracting the full value is putting what we learn there into practice the moment the course ends. Why do people pay expensive fees for such courses when they can read the same content in a book or elsewhere? Because they want to feel the passion of the teacher and experience that learning environment. Thus, the real material is the seminar itself, and it must be experienced live. When you attend a seminar, do so with a resolve to part with every handout distributed. If you regret recycling it, take the same seminar again, and this time apply the learning. It's paradoxical, but I believe that precisely because we hang on to such materials, we fail to put what we learn into practice. The biggest collection of seminar materials I have come across so far was 199 files. Needless to say, I had her discard every single one. Credit card statements. Another thing to discard are all your credit card statements. What is their purpose? For most people, they are simply the means of checking how much money was spent on what during a particular month. So, once you've checked the content to confirm that it's correct and have recorded the figure in your household account book, the statement has fulfilled its purpose and you should discard it. Trust me, you need feel no guilt at all. Can you think of any other time that you would really need your credit card statements? Do you imagine that you might need them for a court case to prove how much was withdrawn? That's not going to happen, so there is no need to treasure these statements for the rest of your life. The same is true for notices of withdrawals from your account to pay utility fees. Be resolute and take this opportunity to get rid of them. Of all my clients, the ones who had the hardest time disposing of papers were a couple, both of whom were lawyers. They kept asking, "What if this document is needed in court?" At first, they made very little progress, but in the end, even they were able to discard almost all their papers without experiencing any problems. If they can do it, so can you. Warranties for electrical appliances. Whether a TV or a digital camera, all electrical appliances come with a warranty. This is the most standard document category in any home, and the one that almost everyone files and saves properly. The method of organizing, however, is usually almost but not quite right. In general, people save their warranties in clear folder files or accordion-style files. The attraction of these files is that the documents can be stored in separate compartments. However, therein lies their pitfall. Because they are so well divided, it is easy to overlook things. Most people save not only the warranty but also the operation manual in the same file. First, let's start by parting with these manuals. Take a look at them. Have you ever used them? In general, There are only a few manuals that we actually need to read, such as our computer or digital camera manual, and these are so thick that they won't fit in a file anyway. So basically, any manuals contained in your warranty folder can be discarded without causing any difficulty. To date, all my clients have discarded most of their manuals, including those for their PCs and cameras, and none of them has experienced any problems from doing so. If they have a problem, they can usually fix it themselves by fiddling with the machine, and they can find solutions for anything they can't figure out on their own from the internet or the place of purchase. So I assure you, you can dispose of them without any qualms. Getting back to warranties. The filing method I recommend is to put them all in a single clear file, without separating them into categories. Warranties are only used once a year, if at all. What point is there in carefully sorting and separating them when the odds that they will be needed are so low? Moreover, if you filed them in a file folder, you'll have to flip through the pages to find the right warranty. In that case, it's just as easy to keep them all in one file, pull out the entire stack, and search through it. If you sort in too much detail, it means you will have fewer opportunities to look at each warranty. Before you realize it, the warranty will be out of date. If you have to sift through them all when you need one anyway, this becomes an excellent opportunity to check the expiration dates of your other warranties. This way, you don't have to go to the trouble of deliberately checking the contents just for the expiration dates. And often, you don't even have to buy the clear file in which you store the warranties because there is usually at least one already in the house. Finally, this method takes up 1/10 of the space of conventional methods. Greeting cards. In Japan, it is the custom to send New Year's cards to convey New Year's greetings. Many have lottery numbers at the bottom. This means that each card has fulfilled its purpose the moment the receiver finishes reading it. Once you've checked to see whether the numbers on your cards have won anything in the lottery, you can part with the cards with gratitude for conveying to you the consideration of the sender. If you save the cards to confirm the sending address for the following year, then only save 1 year's worth. Dispense with those that are 2 or more years old. Accept those that spark joy in your heart. Used checkbooks. Used checkbooks are just that. Used. You're not going to look at them again. And even if you do, it won't increase the amount of money in the bank. So, really, get rid of them. Payslips. The purpose of your payslip is to inform you how much you have been paid for this month. Once you've checked the content, its usefulness is over. Komono. Miscellaneous items. Keep things because you love them, not just because. I pull out a drawer in my client's home and discover a strange little box, just waiting to be opened, like a tantalizing book that promises some fascinating tale. But for me, there is no excitement whatsoever. I know exactly what I'll find inside. Loose change, hairpins, erasers, spare buttons, wristwatch parts, batteries that may or may not be dead, leftover medicine, lucky charms, key rings. And the list goes on. I already know what the client's answer will be if I ask why these things are in that box. Just because. Many items within the home are treated in the same way. They are placed, stored, and accumulate just because, without our giving them much thought. I call this category komono, a Japanese term that the dictionary defines variously as small articles, miscellaneous items, accessories, gadgets or small tools, parts or attachments, an insignificant person, small fry. It's no wonder people don't know what to do with things that fall into such a vague and all-encompassing category. Still, it's time to bid farewell to this just because approach. These items play an important part in supporting your lifestyle, and therefore they, too, deserve to be handled one by one and sorted properly. Unlike clothes or books, this category includes a diverse range of items, and the thought of trying to sort and organize them may seem daunting. If you deal with them in the proper order, however, this task is actually quite simple. The basic order for sorting komono is as follows. 1. CDs, DVDs. 2. Skincare products. 3. Makeup. 4. Accessories. 5. Valuables, passports, credit cards, etc. 6. Electrical equipment and appliances, digital cameras, electric cords, anything that seems vaguely electric. 7. Household equipment, stationery and writing materials, sewing kits, etc. 8. Household supplies, expendables like medicine, detergents, tissues, etc. 9. Kitchen goods, food supplies, spatulas, pots, blenders, etc. 10. Other. Spare change, figurines, etc. If you have many items related to a particular interest or hobby, such as ski equipment or tea ceremony articles, treat these as a single subcategory. I recommend this particular order because it is easier if you start with more personal items and clearly defined content first. If you live alone, you don't really need to worry about the order as long as you do one subcategory at a time. Too many people live surrounded by things they don't need, just because. I urge you to take stock of your komono and save only, and I mean only, those that bring you joy. Common types of komono. Disposables. A surprising number of things are instantly identifiable as disposable without even asking, "Does this spark joy?" I have already pointed out how important it is to relinquish the things that you find it hard to part with. It is equally important when putting your house in order to actually notice the things you have kept, for no particular reason. The majority of people are surprisingly unaware of the odds and ends taking up space in their homes. Gifts. A plate received as a wedding favor that still sits in its box on top of the china cabinet. A key holder you received as a souvenir from a friend that now lies in your drawer. A set of peculiar-smelling incense presented to you by your colleagues on your birthday. What do these items all have in common? They were gifts. Someone important to you used precious time to pick them out and buy them for you. They are an expression of love and consideration. You can't just throw them away, right? But let's consider this more carefully. Most of these gifts remain unopened or have been used only once. Admit it. They simply don't suit your taste. The true purpose of a present is to be received. Presents are not things, but a means for conveying someone's feelings. When viewed from this perspective, you don't need to feel guilty for parting with a gift. Just thank it for the joy it gave you when you first received it. Of course, it would be ideal if you could use it with joy. But surely the person who gave it to you doesn't want you to use it out of a sense of obligation, or to put it away without using it, only to feel guilty every time you see it. When you discard or donate it, you do so for the sake of the giver, too. Cosmetic samples saved for trips. Do you have a collection of cosmetic samples that have been hanging around for a year or more unused? Many people keep these to use on trips, but then never seem to take them when they travel. I contacted various manufacturers to inquire about the shelf life of these products. The answers were varied. Some only last a few weeks, while others are good for a year. When the quantity is very small, such as for samples, the quality deteriorates faster. To use possibly outdated cosmetics, especially when you are supposed to be enjoying your travels, seems rather foolhardy. Electronics packages. Boxes are surprisingly bulky. Discard or recycle the box your cell phone comes in as soon as you unpack it. You don't need the manual or the CD that comes with it either. You'll figure out the applications you need through using it. All of my clients have discarded these things, yet none of them has ever been inconvenienced by their absence. If you do have a problem, you can always get help from the internet or the clerk at the shop where you bought it. It is far quicker to ask a pro for the answer than to struggle to find one in the manual by yourself. Some people save the boxes for electrical appliances because they think they can get more money for the appliances if they ever sell them. This, however, is a waste. If you consider the rent or mortgage you pay, turning your space into a storage shed for empty boxes costs you more than what you could earn selling an appliance in a box. You don't need to keep them for moving either. You can worry about finding suitable boxes when the time comes. It's a shame to let a boring box take up room in your house just because you might need it someday. Unidentified cords. If you see a cord and wonder what on earth it's for, chances are you'll never use it again. Mysterious cords will always remain just that, a mystery. Are you worried you might need it if something breaks? Don't be. I have seen countless homes with duplicates of the same type of cord, but a tangle of cords just makes it harder to find the right one. In the end, it is quicker to buy a new one. Keep only those cords that you can clearly identify and get rid of the rest. Your collection most likely contains quite a few that belong to defunct machines you have long since discarded. Broken appliances. I often come across broken TVs and radios in my clients' homes. Obviously, there is no need to keep these. If you too have broken appliances, see this as an opportunity to contact your local recycler and get rid of them. Bedding for the guest who never comes. Quilts, pillows, blankets, sheets. Spare sets of bedding take up a lot of room. This is another common item that gets discarded during my lessons, and again, my clients rarely miss it. Although it's worth having spare bedding if you have regular guests, it's unnecessary to keep extra sets if you only have overnight visitors at most once or twice a year. Bedding stored indefinitely in the closet often smells so mildewed you wouldn't want to let your guests use it anyway. Take a whiff and see for yourself. Spare buttons. You will never use spare buttons. In most cases, when a button falls off, it's a sign that the particular shirt or blouse has been well worn and loved and has now reached the end of its life. For coats and jackets that you want to keep for a long time, I recommend sewing spare buttons to the lining when you first buy them. For other clothes, if you lose a button and really want to replace it, you can always get what you need at a large handicraft shop. From my work in the field, I have come to the conclusion that when a button falls off, people often don't bother to sew another one on even when they have kept the spares. Instead, they either keep wearing the outfit without a button or leave it lying around somewhere in their wardrobe. If you're not going to use spare buttons anyway, it shouldn't matter that you get rid of them. Products from the latest health craze. Slimming belts, glass bottles for making kefir, a special blender for making tofu, a weight loss machine that mimics the movement of horseback riding. It seems a waste to get rid of expensive items like these that you bought by mail order but never fully used. Believe me, I can relate. But you can let them go. The exhilaration you felt when you bought them is what counts. Express your appreciation for their contribution to your life by telling them, "Thank you for the boost you gave me when I bought you," or "Thank you for helping me get a little more fit." Then discard them with the conviction that you are healthier for having bought them. Free novelty goods. A cell phone screen cleaner that came with a soda bottle. A ball pen engraved with your school's name. A paper fan you got at an event. A set of plastic cups won at a fair. Glasses bearing a beer company's logo. Post-its stamped with the pharmaceutical company's name. A folder with just 5 sheets of blotting paper. A promotional calendar, still in its tube. A pocket calendar, unused even 6 months into the year. None of these are going to bring you any pleasure. Discard or recycle them without any qualms. Small change. Make "into my wallet" your motto. Do you have loose change lying around? A penny or two in the bottom of your purse? A dime in the back of a drawer? A quarter on the table? I always find coins when I'm helping clients put their house in order. The king of the komono category, coins can be found in the entrance hall, the kitchen, the living room, the washroom, on top of furniture, and inside drawers. Despite the fact that coins are perfectly good cash, they are treated with far less respect than paper money. It seems strange that they should be left lying around the house where they are of no use at all. Whenever my clients come across loose change during tidying, I make sure it goes straight into their wallets, never into a piggy bank. Unlike the other categories, you don't need to gather coins from every part of the house. Instead, just pop them into your wallet whenever you stumble on them. If you put them in a piggy bank, you are simply transferring the place where they will be ignored. People who have lived in the same house for a long time are particularly prone to forgetting about their little cache of coins. Frankly, no one I've met who saved pennies without a clear purpose has ever actually used them. If you are saving coins with the vague idea that it would be nice to see how many you can accumulate, now is the time to take them to the bank. The longer you wait, the heavier your cash will be, and the more bother to take it to the bank. I have also noticed that for some unfathomable reason, many of my clients start saving coins in bags when their piggy bank is full. Years later, during my course, they stumble across a bag bursting with coins in the back of a cupboard. By that time, it is pungent with the smell of rust and mold. The coins are discolored, and they make a dull clinking sound instead of jingling. At this point, my clients would rather just ignore the bag's existence. Writing this description is hard enough, but to actually see these coins, stripped of their dignity as money, is heartrending. I beg you to rescue those forgotten coins wasting away in your home by adopting the motto, "Into my wallet."